Here we are. We are live, folks.
Woohoo.
All right.
My
So,
background disappeared.
hello and welcome to episode 15 of Fright Lounge, the show in which the best horrorologists in town will discuss horror in depth and get a conversation going for the seasoned horror fans, as well as helping introduce newbies to the horror genre. I am Rigor from the podcasts Then Is Now, The East Meets the West, and the Cult Movie Lounge.
I'm Bill Van Ryn from Groovy Doom and Drive-In Asylum, there's a brand new issue of Drive-In Asylum on the way, I should mention, and Rigor might have a piece in it as well.
Yes.
But he probably forgot about writing because it was so long ago.
I know. Now I got to write part 2 to it.
Don't forget.
I won't.
Is it a story or an article?
It's an article. It's about the horror exploitation movies that Tristan Rogers was in.
Oh, cool.
So
It's like your favorite actor there.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Hill. Oh, there's my background. I'm trying to get my background to like stay on this wobbly, wavy curtain, and it's anyway. Hi, I'm here. I don't have anything to plug. I'm just here wearing my Freddy Krueger t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I
know they were
changed my
selling
shirt
these. Oh, did you?
at the last minute. You might have noticed I had a taco shirt on uphill, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot my Helena Marcus shirt.
What?
Oh, nice.
Suspiria.
That's awesome.
Nice. I was gonna say this shirt, they were selling this on like Etsy or something, and it only had 3 claw marks going down. And I said, and I wrote them, and I typed that. I was like, "That's Freddy Krueger. Shouldn't there be 4?" And they were like, "Oh, we'll make one for you with 4." And I was like, "Cool."
Hey, you get what you ask for, you know?
Yeah,
That's hilarious. Good for you, man.
yeah. I was like, "What the hell are you doing? It's Freddy Krueger. It's 4. Oh, Wolverine."
That's awesome. Yeah, I have my non-horror Superman shirt on.
All right, it's all good.
All right, folks, tonight we've got a bevy of witch-themed films that we're going to talk about. We've got Suspiria from 1977, Simon, King of the Witches from 1971, The Witch from 2015, and The Blair Witch Project from 1999. So let's get into Suspiria first, because I think of the 4, this is probably the most well-known film of its kind. And I'll read a quick synopsis here. Susie Banyan travels to Germany to perfect her ballet skills. She arrives at the Tanz Dance Academy in the pouring rain and is refused admission after another woman is seen fleeing the school. She returns the next morning and this time is let in. She learns that the young woman she saw fleeing the previous evening, Pat Hingle, no relation to the actor, has been found dead. Strange things soon begin to occur. Susie becomes ill and is put on a special diet. The school becomes infested with maggots, odd sounds abound, and Daniel the pianist is killed by his own dog. A bit of research indicates that the ballet school was once a witch's coven, and as Susie learns, it still is. So first impressions, Michael, you go first. When did you first see this, and what was your first impression?
First saw it last night, and I thought it was awesome. I loved it. Never seen it before. I knew that it was a well-known, horror movie because, as you just said, but I had no idea. I knew nothing about it at all. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting. Beautiful sets, beautifully shot. Actresses and actors and characters were all interesting, and I just got into it, and yeah, and I loved it. I loved the ending and everything. It was fucking fantastic. Oh no, that's the other movie. Yeah, no, Suspiria. Wait, was Suspiria the one? Has there been more than one? Because you wrote 1977 in the.
Yeah, there was a remake in 2018.
Oh, okay. What is the word? Does the word mean something? I thought it was going to be somebody's name, Suspiria.
I don't
It
know.
does have a meaning. The story is there's a reference in the film to Helena Marcus. There's a reference to this concept of the 3 mothers. And the 3 mothers are 3 evil figures that rule the world from different cities on the planet. And there was one in New York, there's one in Rome, and the other one was in Freiburg, Germany. And that's where Suspiria takes place. she's one of the three mothers, the three evil mothers. She's Mater Suspiriorum, the mother of sighs. And
Oh,
Suspiria means it's kind of like a sighing thing, like the strange sighs throughout the movie. You may have heard that on the soundtrack a few times.
Yeah.
yes. Oh, that's what that was. Okay. Because they called her by her name in the movie, but I don't remember them actually saying
Yeah, they
that
don't say
part.
much about that in Suspiria. In Inferno, the follow-up film to Suspiria, they get into it a little bit more. This was a planned trilogy from Argento and Daria Nicolodi, who was his partner and also his life partner. They weren't married, I don't think,
No, I don't
but
think so.
and also she developed these projects with him. So they were going to make these three movies together, and then eventually both of their relationships fell apart, their professional and their romantic relationship. And the trilogy never got not finished until Mother of Tears, which I think was 2007.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've tried to put Mother of Tears out of my mind because it was just sort of all sorts of not the movie anybody wanted. But I've come to appreciate it a little bit more in the year since. There's nothing that's ever going to get back the 1-2 punch of Suspiria and Inferno, which
Yeah.
seem to take place in worlds that don't really exist other than in books and movies, especially, and stories that are whispered at night around the campfire, maybe.
So, Bill, when did you first see this?
I never saw this until the 90s. It was probably like the early 90s when I first saw Suspiria, and I was just astonished. And I was like, this movie is so weird. And I had learned a couple of things about it before I saw it for the first time. So I did have a little bit of background going into it. I knew that this was a film that had been building its legacy over the years. And because it was originally, it wasn't like it was one of the biggest hits of 1977 when it came out. It's just sort of has grown over time, people's devotion to Suspiria. And I think as Argento's filmmaking progressed, this is really him at one of his career peaks, I think, when his visual style and the story come together. If you can even say there's a story. I mean, there's such little story in Suspiria. It's mostly a visual and a visceral experience, I think.
Well, let's put a pin in that idea for some of these other movies.
Yeah.
Whether they have a story or not.
That's one of the big things about Italian horror movies is that they're not concerned about story they're more concerned about how it looks and how it sounds, So
I was pretty satisfied with it, though, that it followed. It was a little bit all over the place, but there was enough of a thread throughout that things did move forward a little bit, and
Yeah.
I was pretty satisfied with how it got there. So
yeah,
It just doesn't make much sense.
no,
Like the motivations of the characters. You're like, why is she doing this? Why is this school still open after
that's
this?
true. Yeah,
When this girl still was gutted basically the
Right.
night before,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it was just all sorts
yeah.
of
Why?
strange.
Yeah, that first death. Holy shit!
Mhm.
Where the guy stabbed her on top of the window, and then the window broke, and
Yeah.
the woman who was underneath got that piece of glass through her face, and oh my god, I was just at that
For
moment
being
I was
nice.
like, oh, this is gonna be awesome.
She got that glass in the face for being nice. She let
For
her
being
crash
nice.
there for the night, and look what happened.
Yeah, she
Right.
was right. This is the lesson, kids. Don't be generous. Don't be nice to people. If somebody's in trouble, just turn them away.
I first saw this probably around the same time as you, Bill. When it first came on video, I bought it on Laserdisc, which I still have actually. And I remember I liked it, but I didn't quite get it. I don't think I was ready for it. I'd heard about it. Same thing. I'd heard about it ahead of time. I knew it was an Argento film, and I knew he was a good director and stuff. And but I found it confusing that first time through, back however many decades ago it was. But I love this film. I really do. I love the way it's shot. I love the colors. It doesn't matter to me if it didn't make too much sense. Like Mike Hill, like you said, there is a through line for her story arc. So I think it's very enjoyable. It's tense and scary, and even when I rewatched it this past week, it was like I actually watched it twice. First time I fell asleep through it, but it's not the movie's fault.
Huh.
But late at night, man, this is a great movie to watch late at night. It's so good. And we've talked
Yeah.
about Dario Argento before. We covered his movie Phenomena, and I don't have we done any others, you guys? I don't think we have we?
I don't
Did the
remember. I don't
one
think
with
so.
the one with like Jennifer Connelly?
Yeah, that was Phenomena, where
Oh,
she
that
could
was
control the
phenomenal.
bugs.
That was good.
And that was weird because I was watching this on Tubi, and when I fell asleep the first time through, I woke up and it was in the middle of it, and she's talking to the bee, and she's touching it or whatever, and I'm like, I don't remember this in Suspiria, and I was like, oh, it's wrong movie. It must have just played the next one.
Yeah, they go automatically. Like, here comes
Yeah.
the next one. Yeah.
I hate that.
I
But,
was lucky to see Suspiria theatrically,
Oh,
like really early on.
Oh
After,
wow.
yeah, the first time I saw it was on video, but I think like the second time I saw it, there was a great series here in 94, I think. It was like 94 or 95 in Pittsburgh. We had this venue on the south side of town called the Rex Theater, and they would show movies there. They also had live events, but mainly it was movies at that time. And they did a midnight movie series where they showed all this good shit. That's the first place I saw Halloween on the big screen, which
Oh,
blew
wow.
my mind because I thought I knew the movie Halloween until I saw it theatrically for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, now I get it. Like, now I understand everything. And it was the same thing with Suspiria. There was a group called the Film Preservation Society, FPS. And one of the guys that did that was someone who I later became friends with. His name's Terry Tom. And I tell Terry all the time, I'm like, you are one of the reasons I got into film in the first place, because you gave me the opportunity to see movies like this on a big screen, the way they were meant to be seen. Last House on the Left, The Exorcist, he showed all that good stuff. And one of the things he showed was Suspiria. And you should know one thing about this movie is that it has an amazing soundtrack performed by the Italian prog rock group. Say that 10 times fast. Prog rock group Goblin.
Yes. Who did the
And-
music for Dawn of the Dead also.
Yeah. And if you hear it in the right kind of projection with the right audio, it's really mind-blowing. The Rex Theater did it. Probably like a couple weeks after that, I went to Carnegie Mellon University because they were screening it on campus, like in one of their halls.
Huh.
And I was like, wow, I can go see it again. So I went, and it's like a beautiful widescreen movie, but they didn't have a wide screen or probably the right lens to project it. And it was like CinemaScope the whole time. Everything was
Wow.
smashed, the image. And I had to watch it that way. I was like, oh, this sucks.
That's funny.
What are you going to
just
do?
imagining in my mind seeing the first Halloween on the big screen, man. That must have been amazing.
I saw that. My parents took me to see that. That was
Really?
terrible. Shit my pants.
Oh my God.
Because
8
I didn't
years
really
old.
get into horror until later. Like Roger, you started exposing me to stuff, and I didn't meet you until I was 12.
Right.
So most of the stuff I saw was on video. Yeah.
It's like seeing the movie for the first time in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, especially if all you've ever seen is on a TV screen. Even a large TV screen can't give you the experience that you get when you're watching Carpenter's Halloween in a theater, because it's just the way he sets up every shot. It's meant to be seen giant size. And there's one scare in the movie that it lost its impact really on TV. And it's like after he kills Linda and strangles her with the phone cord, he picks up the phone and he's on the phone with Laurie for half a second. And that's the first close-up that Carpenter gives that mask in the movie. That's the first time you see it up close
Yeah.
like that. And it's so creepy because now it's a cliche. Now we've seen it so many times that it's like a cartoon almost to us. But back then that was really creepy when that was still fresh. And God, I wish I had gotten that shock theatrically in 1978 or 79, really. which is the
Yeah.
real year of Halloween, even though it did come out in 78. In 79 is when it blew up in the
Yeah.
United States.
Well, especially back then when movies stayed in theaters for months, even years sometimes, or they'd come back
Yes.
a year later, you know?
Yes. God,
So
I missed that time.
I know, me too. I was just going to say that. So, Bill, you mentioned Daria Nicolodi, who is also Asia Argento's mother, and Dario, of course, is her father. She wrote this. She also co-wrote Phenomena and Inferno and The Black Cat from 1989, and she's also acted in a few movies. Anything you could tell us about her, Bill?
I really don't think she got her due for her role in the creation of these films. A lot of people attribute the magic solely to Dario, and I think that Daria brought a lot to the films that they made together, the projects they worked on.
Yeah.
She was kind of unsung, not totally, because she had a pretty big online presence, and she interacted with people a lot. And I think she probably, I hope she felt loved, because so many people are just, in awe of what she could do, the presence that she brought to the films as well. So she's become so iconic. And unfortunately, she passed away maybe 3 years ago, I think, or 4 years ago. It wasn't long.
Yeah. And we've got Jessica Harper, who plays our main protagonist, Susie Banyan. She was also in Phantom of the Paradise, and I didn't realize she was also in Minority Report with Tom Cruise.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Shock Treatment, the follow-up to Rocky Horror Picture Show. She's been doing stuff. In fact, she was on that new show, Fatal Attraction, with Joshua Jackson.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, apparently she was in 4 episodes. She plays Sophie, so I thought that was interesting.
My roommate and I tried to watch that, but it was just so fucking bland. It just didn't have. It didn't have it just didn't have the same psycho, creepy scariness that the movie did.
I'm sorry, but that original movie, my big problem with that movie, and I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent here, but there is no way that Michael Douglas is married to Anne Archer, who's gorgeous, and he cheats on her with Glenn Close, who is not gorgeous. I'll be nice and say
that seems to be the case in like almost every movie, everything I've ever seen where a guy cheats on his wife. The wife is always, attractive, like very attractive. Like, why are you cheating on your wife? But maybe it was like a personality thing. Like Glenn Close was like a little bit more forward and a little bit more wild, and
right.
I don't know. Maybe his wife was beautiful but boring or whatever. I don't know. But
I felt like what's her name? Jessica Harper's voice sounded like Karen Allen a little bit, and she kind of looked like her too in this.
Oh yeah,
I thought, but it's funny because it's not her voice being dubbed, even though she's American. So I don't understand why she didn't bother dub. They didn't have her dub her own voice. I mean, I know sometimes it's a contract issue and all that, but
who?
Oh, I was
Jessica
wondering
Harper.
about that
That's
because I was
her voice.
watching.
Is it?
Yeah, that's her voice.
Okay, because I read that it wasn't.
So
No,
was
that's
this
totally her voice?
Shot in Italian? Because I was watching her mouth when she was talking, and it looked like she was like
Yes, it's all different languages. Because like Udo Kier is speaking German in it.
Yeah, all the
Really?
actors were speaking their native language in the movie, and it was just dubbed later.
What kind of fucked up way is that to do a movie? The actors don't understand what each other is saying.
They do that in a lot of spaghetti westerns too.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
It's not important that they understand. They just have to emote.
Right.
I guess, yeah, all right, I guess so, yeah.
Which, by the way, I can't believe how freaking young Udo Kier was in this movie. Mike, you may recall, he was the guy with the green jacket that started to give her information about the witches, and then he refers her to the older scientist who was really into the occult.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. He's been in a zillion things. He was the guy that was hosting the lavish party in Ace Ventura.
Yes. I recognized him in this movie while he was talking to her, and I was like, I don't know his name, but I've seen him in tons of stuff. Yes.
He's in Blade.
Yeah.
God, he was so young.
Yeah.
Wow. It blew my mind. Like, holy shit.
I guess
he's my friend's neighbor in LA.
Is he really?
Yes.
Oh, you got to get him on the show, dude.
Every once in a while, there's a photo on Facebook of them together, and I'm like, God, who's that old woman? Oh my God, that's Udo Kier.
Who's that old woman?
I do not understand what this old man was trying to tell me. Yeah, I guess because he was speaking German, he had to put his hand on her knee, or I don't know, just had to touch her just to let her know that he was done with his line and she could deliver the follow-up line.
Funny, because that was the exact scene, and my roommate walked through the room and he said, I guess because of the way the movie sounded to him briefly, he said, "Is this dubbed?" And I was like, "I don't think so." And then I watched her mouth while she was talking to him, and I was like, "Well, no, her mouth is lining up exactly with what she's saying in English." So I just assumed that the whole movie wasn't dubbed. But now that I know that, it's okay.
Argento did most of his films that way. They were shot silent, and then he would just create the soundtrack later in ADR.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is it gives the film an otherworldly feel when it's like that. I mean, it has a bad reputation for being like a Godzilla film or whatever. But if you can get past that riff tracks sort of element to it, there's something to be said for that in helping to create a very strange environment in a movie.
Yeah,
that's true.
And we talk about spaghetti westerns and Shaw Brothers films on the East Meets the West show, and they're all shot like that back then. Mainly like the 60s to the early 80s, they shot with no sound, and then they would add in everything afterwards. And sometimes if the actor was an English speaking actor, he'd do his own voice. And sometimes if his contract, he had to go to do another shoot, they'd get someone else to do it. So it's very inconsistent with who they had dubbing people. Like you didn't have the same Italian actor, like Giuliano Gemma didn't have the same guy dubbing his voice into English every movie. So sometimes it's off-putting because like my co-host on the East Meets the West will say, you get this giant guy, but they totally miscast the voice. He's got this tiny little voice.
The maggot scene in this movie was just freaked me out. Like the way they built up to it as like, she's brushing her hair, and then she's kind of like, what's this little tiny thing in my hair? And she pulls it out. She's like, oh, that's weird. And then I was like, how'd that thing get into her room? And then they're just like little by little. And all of a sudden one hits the table that's not obviously coming from her hair because it's too far away from her head. And that's when she looks up. And I was like, I think I like kind of screamed. I was kind of like, oh my God. My roommate's like, what? I'm like, there's maggots all over the ceiling in this movie.
There was an American actress who was based in Rome, and her name was Carolyn De Fonseca. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I hope so. But her voice is in almost every one of these movies because she's at least one character in almost every Italian film that was dubbed into English because she was just convenient, and she could do a good American accent,
Yeah.
And she dubbed Olga in Suspiria.
Oh, okay.
Squawk, squawk, squawk. Mata Hari is gonna file her report. She has that long cigarette holder. She's a great actress too, Barbara Magnolfi. She does a lot of conventions now. But that was Carolyn De Fonseca who dubbed her. And that voice is in so many movies. It's creepy.
Was this because of the dubbing and everything? Was this movie like meticulously scripted, or were there occasionally people ad-libbing? Because there were moments in the dialogue where I thought, wow, that sounded really realistic, like just a random thing that somebody would say, I don't know, like when the women were all downstairs after the maggot fiasco, they all went outside, then they came back in, and the woman was like, okay, we'll all just sleep down here, and they're going to take care of the upstairs. I mean, like the girls were complaining at the beginning of the scene, and one of the girls goes, one went in my mouth. And I was like, what a great line to have in the background,
Well, the thing about the dialogue in this movie is that originally Argento's intent was to have them all be 12-year-old girls. And I think it's his father is the producer or one of the producers. And he's like, no, you're not killing off 12-year-olds. So they changed it to 20-year-olds, 20 somethings, but kept the dialogue. So that's why a lot of it is really weird. Like that whole scene near the beginning where they're arguing about the shoes, and the one girl goes, "If your name begins with S, then you're a snake."
Yeah.
And
then
they're going
she's
back
like
and
Olga.
sticking her
forth.
tongue out.
Yeah.
Then she has to go rent a room from her later.
Yeah.
But they become friends. She's like, even if I have the name of a snake,
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't tell me you're as
That's what
touchy
I
as
mean, like
Sarah.
that kind of line, how like it came back and yeah. And they made what's the main character's name again? I'm blanking.
Susie
Susie.
Bannion.
Susie. They made her sympathetic right from the beginning because she came out of the airport, it was pouring rain, she was trying to get a taxi, and the taxi driver was kind of rude to her. And I remember thinking that, like, wow, like we just met her, but I already kind of feel bad for her because she's, in all these then she tries to get in and she can't get in. And I'm like, this poor woman, you know? So I like right away, I was kind of sympathetic toward her even before anything else happened. So.
And that taxi cab scene was hilarious because she's telling him where she wants to go. She's saying it properly, and he's like not understanding. Then she holds up the paper. He goes, "Oh," and he says the name of the place.
Exactly like she said it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then she exposes him though for just fucking with her. She gets him to say something in English.
Yeah.
Like he understood what she was saying.
Yeah. So funny.
People do that all the time. I've heard that cab drivers do that all the time. They pretend they don't know what you're saying, and then they drive you a longer distance, and then they're like, "Oh, sorry, you got to pay."
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know where we were going.
Can speak now. I wanted to just bring up this one character name. The actress is Eva Axon, and she played Pat Hingle, which every time I heard the name, all I could think of was Pat Hingle, who played Commissioner Gordon in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie.
Not that Pat Hingle.
I know. Oh my God. But yeah, we have an interesting cast here. Bill, do you want to talk about any of the other actors here?
Oh wow. Stefania Cassini, who plays Sarah, Susie's unfortunate friend, who also had the name of a snake and got her throat cut when she jumped into a big bushel of razor wire that happened to be in the attic.
Oh my God, that freaked me out too.
Well, you're not a real dance school unless you have a room full of razor wire. I mean, come on.
Like
I never understood that part. I'm like, didn't she look down? She didn't see that there?
I think she was in a panic because she was being chased and she was just focusing on, can I jump over to the, yeah, you're right. Why would she have looked down? But like, there were like a bunch of like, I don't want to say jump scares, but like totally out of the blue moments that I didn't see coming that scared that. And not only that, but the extended shot of her trying to climb out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like 2 or 3 minutes of her just in pain, just trying to claw her way out of it. And I was like,
lets her suffer for a while, like a bug on a pin.
Yeah.
And then he comes in and just slices her throat.
Yeah. I know, she finally got herself out of the razor wire, and you're like, oh, good. She finally, she's dead.
Well, they weren't going to go drag her out. They were like, just wait till she comes out. Then we'll kill her.
Yeah. No, it was kind of funny. Like as a viewer, like, oh, she finally saved herself. She's out of danger. Oh no, she's not.
Yeah.
That's one of the best elements of an Argento Nickelodeon collaboration. It's like Phenomena. It happened in Phenomena too. Like she falls down that tunnel and all of a sudden she's in a body pit full of maggots.
That was awful. Oh, that was awful.
Like you didn't see that coming.
Wow. Oh, hey, I have a question. Remember, I was just talking about at the beginning, the woman who got the girl who got murdered on the glass and it fell down and the woman got the piece of glass through her face.
Yeah.
Remember there was that other movie that I can't remember the name of where that somebody came to the door and put an axe into the guy's face.
Bay of Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Bay of Blood?
Yeah.
Twitch of the Death Nerve.
Which came first? I'm kind of curious because they're kind of the same effect. In a way, I'm wondering.
That was like 71, I think, right?
Which inspired the other, or were they unrelated?
Argento was a student of Mario Bava. I mean, that totally had everything to do with Mario Bava. The lighting, everything in his films. I mean, I'm not saying he, is a plagiarist. I wouldn't say something like that about someone like Dario Argento.
No, he was inspired.
Yeah.
The influence, yeah.
A lot of the stuff he does, he got directly from Mario Bava.
Yeah, I mean, look at, the first 2 or 3 Friday the 13th movies ripped off quite a bit of that Bay of Blood.
Yeah. They totally did.
Oh my god. So I got some images here we're gonna put up on the
Yeah, where's the ads?
doing it right now, sir. And of course I got this new camera in the way now I can't see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow.
This is from Pittsburgh, by the way.
Nice.
The Stanley Theater. That's when, a big performance venue would get a movie. You'd go see a movie in a place where you could see a concert. That place is called the Benedum Center now. They remodeled it and reopened it as the Benedum Center. And that's where so much shit plays there. That's what I do. I work in box offices and theaters. I'm in a ticket selling union.
Oh, okay.
That's like it's not the theater I work in. It's a block
Well, who
away
knew
from
that
there.
was gonna happen? Not me.
What happened?
Uh-oh.
Ah, son of a cunt.
This is better than
Son
the
of a
ad.
bitch. Come on.
Well, while he's doing that, I feel
How
like
much
my
is it?
camera needs to be tilted a little. There we go.
All right, let's see.
Oh, that's
Let's
so
see. Flip it.
freaky. Your whole thing
Flip
just
it.
moved.
Maybe if it's not so.
Who, me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had it tilted because I felt like I was like leaning one way or the other. But
So anyway, Suspiria at the Stanley. Oh, there you are, Michael.
Sorry, I was trying to stabilize my thing. Yeah.
We
he's
heard
a
the whole
severed
thing.
head.
Oh, you heard the whole thing?
Yeah.
we did.
I forgot to mute myself. I just turned off the camera.
We were
Yeah,
dying
we-
laughing. I love it though. You're like the floating head of death.
Yes, now I'm floating.
Anyway, this was 77, so it was still the Stanley Theater. That's where all the big movies played, at the Stanley. And then after they had their movie house run, you'd see them in a neighborhood theater and a drive-in.
Nice. It's funny though. They've got 3 hours of free parking. What if they're playing Gone with the Wind? You're screwed.
Don't ask.
All right, and then we'll go to the next one.
The only thing more terrifying than the last 80 minutes are the first 12.
Which is sort of self-defeating. It makes it sound like the scarier part is at the beginning.
Right. But if you don't think about it too much, it's a good tagline, sort of like.
This one's the British campaign. This is from the UK, the most frightening film you'll ever see.
Man, and then you get to see Genesis afterwards.
Genesis in concert. What the fuck?
That's awesome.
I think
Is there any? Go ahead.
this would have been like the Peter Gabriel era Genesis in
Yes.
77.
Oh
wouldn't it?
wow, yeah.
He'd have a giant flower on his head or something.
Yeah.
Is there any significance to the little X that's next to the title, or is that just?
That's
Yes,
the rating.
the rating. Because in England, before they had the 18 rating, they had the X, which didn't mean pornography. It just was basically like rated R.
Violence, yeah.
And what they considered violence was unbelievable. I know that Suspiria, this is a very violent movie, by the way. I don't think we really addressed that as how explicit the violence is in Suspiria. The
Yeah.
stabbings, the throat slashings.
Yes.
A lot of it was cut out, especially for an X rating in the UK. And I'm not sure if Suspiria was a video nasty or not.
I was going to ask you that.
But
Video
Hey.
nasty.
yes, Michael.
What's
It's
What's a video nasty? It sounds intriguing.
Rigor. Explain a video nasty. to
Basically,
Michael.
in England, when they realized these horror movies were coming out, I forget what the first one was, but they created a list called the Video Nasties, and a lot of these horror movies that we talk about were on that list, and they were banned basically from England.
Wow.
It was very difficult to see them.
They
you know.
weren't only banned, they were criminalized. And
Yes.
people who were exhibiting them, that were renting them, there were actually some people who were prosecuted and got jail time
Oh my
for making
God.
these movies available. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Video Nasties.
Video nasties.
It all started with a moral outrage. That's how all the bad shit starts. There's a moral outrage, and then all of a sudden people are in jail for nothing.
That's what
That
they
just makes other people more interested in it because there's a moral outrage.
That's one thing, Bill, I mentioned in the article that I wrote for your magazine was Pete Walker, the director for the Flesh and Blood show. He couldn't. The censors were killing him in England, but he wanted to add a lot of gore in. Not a lot. I mean, he wanted to add some in to appeal to the drive-in, theaters in America.
Mhm.
So he had the foresight, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't care, if the British film censors cut it out, so what? They'd
Right.
sell it to America.
Right. And that was all the Suspiria ones we have, right, Bill?
I think so. There might have been one other one.
Was there?
No,
The only thing that
no,
kept
that's it.
the violence from being too bad in this one, although I don't care. I mean, make it as violent as you want. But it seemed like that the blood was sort of like red, almost like tempera paint. Like it didn't really look like blood. It was like a bright fire engine red. I
Yeah.
thought someone had told me with some other movie that they did that. They made it like ridiculously red so that it was I think it was Kill Bill. They did that whole section in black and white because there was so much blood
Oh, yeah.
when she was in the restaurant killing the crazy 88s with the
Yeah.
yellow bumblebee suit on. And somebody
don't-
said, oh,
Go ahead.
What?
No,
Oh.
go ahead.
I don't know, somebody told me that they did part of that scene black and white because there was just too much blood. And then when there was blood, they tried to make it look kind of ridiculously like Fruit Punch so that it wouldn't be like the goriest, nastiest scene on the on in cinema.
Yeah, Dawn of the
So-
Dead's famous for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of films from this era did that. There was one I talked about recently. I can't recall what it was, but
that wasn't really an artistic choice until on Dawn of the Dead, because Tom Savini didn't intend for it to look that way, and he was really pissed off when he saw the dailies and he saw how the blood looked on camera. Because I guess you don't really know the way because when you're working with red, you don't know how that's going to show up on camera. So they shot all this stuff with his original mixture of the blood, and it looked so cartoonish, and he hated it. But Romero was like, no, make it all like that. That's how we're going to do it the rest of the movie, because he loved it so much.
yeah. I think didn't Romero feel that it took the edge off, like Michael, like you were saying, that it was not as gory as it could have been.
I prefer blood to look realistic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I always think it's weird in movies where like there's a person who's been murdered for a couple of hours or longer and they're looking at the person's clothes and the blood still looks really red. But every time I've cut myself in the past and the blood dries, it's like brown.
It would
Yeah.
never look like that. It would look brown or black once it dried.
Yeah.
Not that I'd know.
That's what you heard, right?
He read it on the internet. So
I saw it on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This movie, speaking of the blood, this movie is one of the last films. It was shot on one of the last film stock reels or several reels of Technicolor film that was available in Italy. And it was processed using the last Technicolor machine
Wow.
that was available in Italy, and maybe even, I'm not sure if it was everywhere in the world, but basically like this was shot on original Technicolor film stock, which shortly afterwards became unavailable, at least the original version of Technicolor. So Argento was very concerned with the way this movie looked, and it was meticulously planned, all of it. And
Yeah.
that's part of what makes him. I mean, earlier I kind of like suggested that he was stealing from Mario Bava, which I didn't intend to say really, but he really did have an artist's grasp on what he wanted to be on the screen when he made this movie, which
Yeah.
is that's part of his genius, at least his appearance of genius. That's what he was into at this time.
You're shitting on him again. You were trying to rescue it, and then you
I
just went right
know.
down the hole again.
I know. But no, it's just
Part of
he
his
doesn't-
genius. Well, he seemed like a genius.
well, he doesn't do movies like this anymore. That's what it pisses everybody off, is he doesn't make movies like this
Yeah.
anymore. And everyone's like, oh, Argento has a new movie there. His horrible Dracula 3D project that really did not go over very well. So after that, everyone was like, oh, he's done. And then he did Black Gloves recently, which was sort of a return to form, I guess. But I don't know. I just want him to start making movies like Suspiria again.
Yeah. That's why Quentin Tarantino said he's only going to do 10 movies and that's it, because he doesn't want to end up like an Argento or even a Cronenberg, who in his later years, his movies have just not been good.
Mm. Has he already made 10?
No, I think the last one's coming up. He's got the plan. I forget what it's about, but he's
Oh, and he would do
going into
whatever. I'll believe that when I see it.
right.
Quentin
Then he'll have his
Tarantino.
comeback movie.
Yes.
His
I'll do
reunion
one more.
movie.
I'll make 11. No, I'll make 12. I just signed a 5-picture deal for $50 million.
Mhm.
Right. So just want to I just want to talk about this a little bit more and then we can wrap it up and get on to the next film because we have 4. Did you guys
Okay, I
notice
get
the
4.
scene where the dog bit the blind guy's throat out?
Yes.
There's
Another
like
thing I did not see coming at all.
yeah.
I thought something was going to come and kill both of them, like the way it was shot. I was like, something's going to fly down on them and kill them both. And
Yeah, but there's kind of a crane shot where you see, and they do a quick close up of this sort of it looks like an eagle statue at the top of one of the buildings,
Yeah.
and then after the dog attacks him, or even during the attack, it's gone.
yeah.
And I wonder if like that was some kind of demon that came down and possessed the dog because there was really no reason for it to attack him, right? Or did I miss something?
No,
No, the woman fired him because she was pissed off and he was he was not in their good graces anymore, I guess. So they just wanted him dead.
well, he suggested that he knew what was going on at the school after they had the blow up because he was just this blind guy that came to the school and they were just sort of like not mindful of him or that
Right.
he could hear everything that they were talking about. And for some
Oh.
reason, the witchcraft at this school is a conspiracy, which I don't understand because everyone seems to be in on it. That's not a conspiracy.
Right.
So, I don't know. But anyway, like that was his mistake. He got mad because she said she was going to put his dog down, and he was like, "I'm blind, but I'm not deaf." And so
Oh.
they were like, "Oh,
Okay.
he has to die." So
Okay.
that night they sent that evil thing out that did the first murder, the thing with the hairy hands. They sent whatever that evil was out, and it possessed the dog and made him kill the guy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all. The dog being the one to attack him. That caught me off. Although
Yeah.
I will say that there were 2 scenes in the movie, and I can't recall the other one at this moment, but where I thought like they let the suspense go on a little too long before like something happened. So like that was one of them when the blind guy was in that open square and he was trying to figure out the dog's barking and he's trying to figure out what's there. And there's all these weird shots and this like tense music. And he's going, is someone there? And it just went on and on and on and on. And I was like, for fuck's sake, you got the tension ratcheted up. Okay. I'm there. Like, can we just, whatever's going to happen, can we just have it happen, please? Like, it just was like 10 seconds too long for me, you know.
That's funny. Yeah, I agree, actually.
I forget what the other one was. There was one other scene in that same movie, which I can't think of it right now, where it was just like the slow, you know, I don't know. I forget what it was. Oh, maybe it was when the main character was going down after she had gone, she turned the lily and she went through that room into the hidden hallway. Maybe it was the big her going down the whole goddamn hallway to finally get to the room where they were. Like that took like 10 minutes. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Let's get rid of that bitch of an American girl.
Nothing's happening. Like just have her turn the corner.
Right.
Like imply that the hallway was long. You know, we don't have to see it.
Do it dissolve, and there you go.
Yeah.
Bill, did this ever play at the Drive-In Monsterama?
Yes, it did. They've done Suspiria.
Too bad. I would have liked to have seen it.
This would be a great drive-in movie.
Yeah. We had some bat foo in this too, where she's fighting the bat, which looked far better than a hammer bat, you know?
Maybe.
That was actually not a bad scene. Yeah. Although I thought she would have been bitten all the time that many times that the bat came down upon her.
Yeah.
I thought she would have had like a bite on her head or something, but
get the rabies.
She did pretty well trying to fight it off, you know, and then she I don't know what the hell the thing did to itself, but it like fell on the floor and couldn't really fly. And then first she put the blanket over it, and I was like, "That's it? That's all you're gonna do?" And then she's like, "Bam, bam, bam!" I was like, "Now we're talking." now I'm satisfied. Yeah, I
Oh,
liked
man.
her character. Her character was cool.
Yeah, yeah, she definitely was. And did you notice too at the end? I mean, Bill, you probably already knew about this. I didn't realize it till I was watching it this time around, where she knocks over the was it like a peacock that had the
Yeah,
crystal plumage, and she
Yeah.
uses one of the feathers to kill it or whatever you call it. Which obviously that's a nod to his, his other movie, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage from 1970.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene where she goes into the witch's bedroom and wakes her up. That's you're trying to not wake up someone who's sleeping, and all of a sudden, like the bowling balls roll down and bang against the bottom of their bed. So that was
yeah,
an amazing part. And then she's like, "What are you gonna do now, huh?
Yeah.
You want
yeah,
to kill him in
yeah,
the market?"
yeah.
I swallow your soul. I swallow your soul.
Asshole. Yeah, I really liked that at the end, that ending, because I was like, the main character, I keep forgetting her fucking name. Teresa?
Susie.
No. Susie. God damn it. Susie Sarah, the S name. Susie S names, I should say. At the very, very end, she had the glass crystal feather in her hand, and she was gonna stab the woman, but then she disappeared. She, wasn't there anymore. And then
Yeah.
she kind of looked back just in time to see like a tiny bit of the outline, and she realized, oh, she's still there. She just made herself invisible. And
Yeah.
so she just stabbed into the space, and where the invisible shape was, and she looked at it 2 or 3 times to make sure she knew where it was. Then she went bam, and I was like, yes. That was great. Like she figured it out. I don't know, I
Yeah.
thought that was cool. That was very satisfying.
There's
Awesome.
there's a subtle thing that happens there too that I don't know. I know we've been talking about this movie for almost an hour now, but
Yeah.
Oh, have we? Okay.
there's this subtle thing that happens at the end there that I don't know if this is intentional or not, but here's how I read the ending of Suspiria is. If you've ever read Stephen King's short story Grandma, where his grandma's a witch and he ends up alone with her when she dies, and she comes after him like to hug him after she's dead, because when you kill a witch, you get her power. And she kills Helena Marcus, and then all of a sudden the room starts blowing apart, and all this power, because this power is emanating from Susie, but she doesn't know how to control it, because everywhere
Right.
she goes in the school, stuff starts exploding outwards from everywhere she
Oh, that's
walks.
right.
And like the windows break
Okay.
when she walks by them, and like doorknobs explode when she reaches for them. So and at the end you see
Yeah.
her, she walks out into the rain, and all of a sudden you see her laughing. Like
Yeah.
she's laughing like she understands now. I don't know.
Didn't the old professor explain that if you kill the head witch, you destroy the coven?
Yeah, that's why the rest of them are dying when she walks by and she sees them all going like so they're dead, or powerless now at the very least.
Oh, I like that interpretation. That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even think of
That's
that.
very cool.
That's cool. All
It's
right.
like
So
the quickening.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That sensation you're feeling is the quickening.
I know that Stephen King story came much later after Suspiria, because if people hear me say that, they're going to say, "Oh, and that came later." But I think it was just like the legend of witches is what I was
Right.
getting at. That's part of the legend of witches.
Yeah.
If you kill a witch, you get her power.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap this up. Bill, final thoughts on Suspiria.
It's in my DNA. I can't say anything bad about Suspiria. It's one of the movies that I just fell in love with. One of the first movies that I ever loved, the same way I love a person. Suspiria.
That says more about you than it does about the movie.
I know. I'm a terrible person.
But the movie's not going to go to the fridge and get you a beer,
It's there for me at other times.
Well, I gotta say, I loved it. I had no idea what to expect, and I just thought it was awesome. And what's funny is the next thing I was thinking to say is I really want to see it again. Like now that I've seen it, I don't want to wait too long before I see it again. And I think I said the exact same thing about Phenomena. That
Oh yeah.
once I got all the way through it and I realized, I understood the whole story and everything, I was like, I want to see this again. I want to watch. So maybe I'll do like a Argento twofer some night.
Yeah. Maybe do it before. Maybe we should do Inferno on one of our upcoming shows, and then you can watch those the week before.
I love Inferno too. And talk about a movie that doesn't really make sense. That is definitely Inferno. Suspiria has a tight plot compared to Inferno,
comparatively, yeah,
which is all over the place.
Yeah.
And Mike, I was thinking earlier, I'm like, geez, I would have thought you would have watched it with me because I had it on Laserdisc. But when I got it, it was probably around the time that you were away at college. I went to college locally, and you went away. So
yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie. I love how it looks. I love the score. And as we mentioned, folks, if you've never seen this before, you have to take into consideration that a lot of these Italian horror films, especially from the 70s, didn't really care too much about the plot. It wasn't their chief concern. So when you go into it with that in mind, you'll find it's thoroughly engaging. It's fun to watch, and I highly recommend this movie.
Yeah.
So next up, we are going to tackle Simon, King of the Witches from 1971. And do we want to take a break, gentlemen, or are we good to go?
I'm good to
go.
Okay. I'll read the synopsis. Simon Sinistrari, played by Andrew Prine, is a cynical ceremonial magician who's on a quest to become a god. He's living in a storm sewer, selling his charms and potions for money when he's befriended by a young male prostitute named Turk. Turk introduces Simon to his world of drugs, wild parties, and bizarre satanic rituals featuring ultraviolet and a goat. Death, freakouts, and mayhem ensue, along with romance for Simon with the district attorney's daughter, Linda. Simon, a degenerate practitioner of magic, uses his satanic rituals to seduce Linda. Together, the two lovers search for the proper spell to turn themselves into gods. So, Michael, first impression on this one.
Talk about a movie with no story. Holy shit. I fucking hated this movie because like at the beginning I was on board. I was like, okay, let's see if this goes somewhere. Let's see if the things start to connect. And I just felt like it got more and more random and disconnected as it went along. And it just started. There was no. I was actually saying to myself as I was in the last 40 minutes of it, like, what the fuck is this movie about? Like, there's no, he goes through all of this stuff talking to his little prostitute friend about how the most important thing is to get that whatever that steel rod to charge it up with power, and then he finally does, and then I don't know. I thought that was going to be like a climactic shift in the movie where he just got all his power and started going nuts, and I don't understand the title. Like, why? I don't understand the title. And he himself said, I'm a magician about 1,100 times in the movie. And then there were other characters who said he's a magician about another 1,100 times. It's like, why didn't they just call the movie The Magician? Keep saying it over and over and over and over. Anyway, I'm sorry, but that's my quick take.
Cool. Bill?
This is a quintessential 70s drive-in film to me, even though I never saw this at the drive-in, and I didn't even see it until pretty recently. We did it on the Drive-In Asylum double feature, and that may have been the first time I ever watched it. And it's sort of like, it reminded me of a biker film. It's got the vibe of a biker film almost. It's got a little bit of, definitely it has an acid film edge to it, especially since it was, I think it's 71.
Yeah.
This movie was made. So, there was still that acid man kind of thing. And I don't know, that seems to be what's going on in this movie. It's just a bunch of it is pretty, it promises more than it could deliver. Like that with that summary that you just read, Rigor, I was like, wow, is this the movie I watched?
Me too.
Andrew Prine is just amazing.
He's
an
great.
Amazing presence in any film that he's in.
Yeah, he was really good.
So, someone's calling.
Oh, it was my reminder for something.
And the woman too, I thought was really, really good. She wasn't like a major character, but I thought she played her role really well, really believable.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure I saw this on TV when I was younger in the 70s or 80s, if it played on TV. I mean, definitely, I loved it. It had that 70s feel. It made me feel real nostalgic. It seemed to me as if it was though and this is similar to a John Saxon film I saw recently called The Glove, where it seemed like it was a pilot to a TV series or a failed pilot, except this was a rated R kind of pilot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe because I had seen it before, my expectations weren't extremely high. And I do love the Star Trek, original series style special effects where things glow and stuff.
Yeah.
But he's kind of like a bad Doctor Strange, like a bad guy Doctor Strange.
Yeah. I don't know what he was so intimidating in the way that he acted and so confident. And I just felt like, oh, it's only a matter of minutes before this guy starts kicking some serious ass, because he's obviously got access to all these. Even when he went to the party, I don't know if it was the first one or not. He stood there in front of everybody and he was like, I have all these amazing powers, but if you don't get into that, then no, here you can buy some of these little cheap trinkets or whatever. It's like, I kind of thought like when he was done with that, he was going to go, okay, now let me show you what I can do, and like open the ceiling up or something. But he just never, talk about promising more than like what. Like I was just waiting the whole movie for him to bust out with his badass powers, and I feel like it just never happened. And
well, plus this is a hippie movie too. I mean, this was post Manson, or maybe it was definitely post Manson. And it was just sort of like this resurgence in exploitation films in general, to kind of capitalize on people's morbid curiosity about hippie cults and witchcraft, and just anything that could be perceived as counterculture, and the kind of counterculture that strikes back like the Manson family did. And I think that's what mainly the angle of this film, because tonight's show is about witches. That's really the connection to witchcraft, is sort of like this hippie-esque kind of thing, and it's presented as Simon is kind of a guru to these people, and he's somebody that has accessed magic and power and is able to channel it, and that's what they want. And of course, that's what people saw in Charles Manson.
Right.
Somehow people saw this in Charles Manson.
I really feel like too, though, a lot of movies from this time period and even TV shows, like you said, Michael, they set up this premise. You expected something spectacular at the end, and they often fall short. And I think part of it is the budgets. They just didn't have the budgets to go where they promised they were going to go.
Yeah.
I think. And also, I think there was just sort of a limitation in the way of thinking about how to do the special effects. If we can't make it look good, we're not going to do it at all, which is preferable to making, be real shitty and have shitty special effects through the whole thing,
Yeah. I did like that scene where he went to, I forget how he got there. His chauffeur or whatever brought him to this place where there were supposedly a bunch of witches, and they were doing this whole ceremony and stuff. And the Simon like stood there and watched it for a while. And then he basically told them they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They were a bunch of pretenders. And he's like, oh, look, I'm riding on a broom. It's like, you guys are, you just got yourself convinced that you know what you're doing, but you're not real witches. And he mocks them, and then the guy's like, let's get out of here, and then they leave. I kept thinking, oh, maybe the witches are going to make another appearance in the movie, and then the title will make more sense. And then no.
Although he does say to Turk at the beginning, he says, I'm a warlock, and he's like, what's that? And he's like, a male witch.
Right, yeah. But then he keeps using the word magician over and over and over through the movie, and I feel like, why? I don't know. Maybe they just thought it was a cool sounding title. They used it.
Yeah. One thing I found interesting was the director was Bruce Kessler, who did quite a few TV shows. He did Knight Rider, Greatest American Hero, The A-Team, Mission Impossible. But he also did the TV movie Cruise into Terror with Dirk Benedict, John Forsythe, and Frank Converse. Remember that one, Bill?
Oh yeah, we did that on this show too.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I got to watch that again. I haven't seen that in decades. But I think for me, that's why this film sort of has that made for TV feel to it, is that he just had that sensibility and knew how to put something together in that kind of style, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I really, and then by the time we got to the end, where the mirror thing happened, and then it looked like 2001 for a little while, where there was
Yeah.
very like acid trip kind of like lights all over the place. And then I thought, oh, what he's finally going into this other dimension. He's finally reached like this peak that he was trying to get to. And then he just wakes up on the floor.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Did it happen or didn't it?
Yeah. It's like, wait, what was all that?
it was cool though. It was super trippy.
It was cool. Yeah.
But, yeah, Andrew Prine was awesome. I mean, to me, he'll always be Steven from V and V: The Final Battle. That was where I first encountered or first knew who he was. But he's another one with a ton of TV shows under his belt, like and he was also in the movies The Crypt of the Living Dead and Lords of Salem from 2019, which, Bill, you mentioned that one too. We should cover that one because that's a good one. It's a Rob Zombie film.
Yeah, I dig that one. Rob
Yeah.
Zombie gets a lot of shit, but I don't know. Some of it's deserved, some of it isn't.
Yeah, it was just too many.
Another thing that I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going down the cast list.
Oh, another thing that I kind of that set up an expectation for me was when Simon first went to I guess it must have been like one of the first big parties that he went to, and he saw the district attorney's daughter or whatever, the woman with the straight hair who becomes his interest in the movie.
Yeah.
And at some point they're talking and she says something like, I feel like I've known you before or something. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. Like they knew each other in a previous life and they're going to figure that out. And then, they're going to do flashbacks and I came up with that expectation on my own. But when they said that, I was like, oh, that's a whole wrinkle that they're going to delve into. And then they didn't really. I mean, he got her involved in his stuff, but anyway.
Like it could have been one of those things, sort of like Dracula or something, where he sees this chick that looks exactly like his fiance from 500 years ago or something.
Yeah. Or like I thought she had powers. I thought she was a witch when he was drawn to her. I thought, oh, maybe he's drawn to her because she has powers she doesn't know about. And then I thought, well, maybe he's going to like collect a little group of witches, out of the city. And then he's going to be like the leader or the king and of them. And they're going to do some serious damage or I don't know. I just, but it just was so like, oh, it's here, it's there. And then it rains and he has to run back and get his stuff and it gets washed out of the drain. And then he's got to go here. And then the first time he tries to charge the thing, it doesn't work. And so then he has to come up with this other way. And then he finally charges it. And then the police searches stuff and take it away. And they're talking about it in the lab. And like, he doesn't even get it back for like another 20 minutes. I'm like, we did all that buildup for him to charge it. And then then he doesn't even have it for a while. And then he finally gets it back. And I was just like, where is this going? What is happening?
I think if anything, the one big problem I had with this, and it's really no fault of the film, is I kind of kept expecting him to be a good guy. I thought he was going to be heroic, and he really wasn't. He was kind of a douche in the end. So kind of like, I think that's probably a failing of, actually, maybe it is a failing of the film, because had they made him a hero, and like you said, maybe he was trying to pull a team together of, similar witches or warlocks or whatever, that would have been a cool premise.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention a couple of the cast members here. Norman Burton played Rackham. He was Felix Leiter in Diamonds Are Forever. Before David Hedison played him. He was also in Towering Inferno, Planet of the Apes, The Terminal Man with George Segal. I like that movie. And The Hand of Death, which was, Bill, you're familiar with The Hand of Death, right?
Manos, The Hands of Fate. No, I'm not sure I know what you mean by The Hand of Death.
It's a film from 1962, and if you look at the poster art for it, the guy in the front is a monster, and he looks like the character, the Thing from the Fantastic Four, and they think this movie inspired that. And the movie was considered lost for ages, and I think about 10, maybe 15 years ago, somebody unearthed a print of it on film, and it's been restored. I still haven't seen it yet, but I remember reading about it, and like some
Wow.
desperately searching for this film because they had seen it in the theater as a kid, and that might be one we may want to cover in the future. But also, Gerald York, who plays Hercules in this, Hercules Vincent, he was in It's Alive. And the ironic part about this, that we're doing this today, is that Sharon Farrell, who plays the
Yeah.
mother in It's Alive, just died. And I wrote a whole article about it for work this morning.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting.
So many people are, we're reaching that time, I guess, where
Yeah.
people are starting to pass away, and then one day
Yeah.
it'll be our turn.
She was the last surviving cast member of Hawaii Five-O because she was on it played a detective for quite a few episodes. Now they're all gone. But who is this actress, Ultraviolet? I know she was in Midnight Cowboy, but
Sounds like an X-Man.
who names their kid Ultraviolet?
Ultraviolet is one of the Warhol superstars.
Oh, right. I should have remembered that.
That's the other connection that this film has to, counterculture stuff of its time. Was Ultraviolet was, one of the beautiful Warhol people.
Right. Okay.
She was a little more visible than some of the others, like Candy Darling. I think Candy Darling was only in a couple of movies. She appeared in Silent Night, Bloody Night.
Yeah.
A weird Christmas slasher, proto slasher with Mary Warnoff.
Yeah, we covered that last year.
Yeah. The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart, which is a rarely seen film from 1970 starring Don Johnson.
Oh.
It's sort of like a counterculture exploitation film about a kid. It was an actual novel. Robert Westbrook wrote it. I think I got his name right. And it was sort of like an autobiographical thing of a kid who goes to film school and ends up falling into the drug culture.
Huh.
Candy Darling shows up for like half a second in that movie. She was one of those people, like she was in a movie for a couple seconds, then you didn't see her.
Right. That's funny. I'm going to share some newspaper ads here. This one is from the Oakland Tribune, Friday, June 4th, 1971. The evil spirit.
That poster's more interesting than the movie was.
I've never seen this ad before.
Sorry, I don't mean to be. I don't mean to be shitting on it so much. I just.
It's fine. Wait,
it's a cool design, though.
It is cool. What's that?
That's beautiful.
A lot of drive-ins. Yeah, I love that. Just that 70s flow of things,
Yeah.
And then it's the same. Why did it? Okay, it's the same artwork, but it's a different one. This is also the Oakland Tribune, but a slightly different layout here.
Us choose evil. Ceremonial sex. Let's not forget about that.
Oh my god, a rated R. And then this one, it's on a double bill, actually a triple bill with Werewolves on Wheels and Evel Knievel.
Werewolves on Wheels.
It is kind of a biker film.
Yeah.
My God.
Werewolves on Wheels is one of those movies I really need to revisit because I remember I used to go to this place in Harvard Square that had it was sort of towards the end of when video stores were going out of business and they had a ton of VHS tapes. And I remember seeing this movie and I was like, oh, I want that. But it was like $20 or something. I didn't have it at the time. And I'm like, I had it in the back of my head. And then I don't know, a month or two later, I had the money and I went back and literally you take the train there, but then you had to walk like 2 miles to get to it. But I grabbed it finally. I still have it on tape.
Did you ever watch it?
Oh yeah. It's horrible, but
It's Werewolves on Wheels should have been titled Werewolf on Wheels because there's only one, and it's only in the last maybe 3 minutes of the movie.
And you want to talk about movies that have no plot? That I don't think they even had a script. They just held the camera up to these bikers for an hour and a half, and then threw makeup on the dude at the end.
Oh man, that's awful.
Oh man. So that's what we got there. So we'll go back. We'll stop the sharing because sharing
Right.
is caring. All right. So anything else we want to say about this? About Simon, King of the Witches from 1971.
I just want to say I thought it was weird that he addressed the audience in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he talked to the camera, like, "Hi, when it rains, most people go indoors, but because I live in a storm drain, I come out when that happens. I'm a badass, and don't you forget it." It's like, well, okay, like, what the fuck?
He kept warning his friend there that it could flood, yet he
Yeah,
knew all his luggage, his entire worldly goods were all
yeah.
there. It's like, really?
He should have like hung it on hooks or something so that even if it flooded, he wouldn't.
Christ. It's a warlock. How did not see that coming? I did
Yeah.
like though the trippy, just sort of the when in that trippy scene you mentioned towards the end of the movie where it looked like the old Doctor Who intros from the first four Doctors.
Yes, I noticed that.
I thought that was cool. I
And I
think
like the scene where the flower pot fell on the guy. That was kind of cool.
that was cool.
Yeah.
I think they do that. It's something to do with like you put a camera on a monitor on the and it like feeds back on itself, and that's how they get that effect.
I love that. Yeah.
So final thoughts on this movie, Bill.
It's a 70s grindhouse perfection. It doesn't have to be great. It's just a movie that flickers on a drive-in screen and you're sort of like following it and you're drugged out and maybe like boozed out, whatever you've been doing at the drive-in. Or maybe you're just sleeping. You every once in a while you wake up and you look at the screen and something's happening. That's Simon King and the Witches to me.
Nice,
That
Michael.
actually makes sense. Having it on in the background, I can sort of see like, yeah, you're high, you're drunk, you're having sex in the car, you're sleeping, not really watching it. Like okay, that I can sort of get that. But I since I wasn't doing any of those things when I watched it,
That
I'm
was
sorry.
your first mistake, Michael.
That was my first. I should have gotten loaded before I watched it. Yes.
I thought you knew. Sorry.
I should have. That should have been in the notes.
Too funny.
No, maybe yeah, I'm sorry. I hated it. I will never sit through that fucking movie again because it
That's
just
okay.
went, to me, it just went nowhere and there was no point. And I kept wanting him to live up to his bragging and his confidence. And you just feel like he never did anything substantial in the movie. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have to say, I really enjoyed this movie. I there's something about the feel of the film. I can't quite put on my finger on it, but it gives me the same kind of comfort level, like watching like a $6 Million Man or Hardy Boys or Wonder Woman. You know, watching one of those
Mm.
'70s shows, I get the same feeling. You know, and even like we said, that mirror cool effect trippiness at the end was just it was just so '70s, and it just really brought me back. And you know,
Yeah.
it's like that for me is what works about the film is it just takes me into that frame of mind.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not it's a good movie, it's really
Right.
isn't, but it's fun. It doesn't have to be a good movie
It
again.
has the atmosphere and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. So why don't we take a quick 5-minute break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about The Witch from 2015. All right.
Okay, cool.
Right on.
All right. Okay, folks, I'm back. And there's Bill.
Hello.
Hey. So that Sharon Farrell I was talking about, she led an interesting life. And she was married like 3 times. And then this guy she was with for like 40 years, they ended up becoming like common law spouses. And he just took all her money. Apparently, he used to beat her up. Like if you read her blog on her website, she's like, all I remember was broken bones and teeth and stuff. It was horrible. It was so.
Who is this?
This chick that was in the movie It's Alive, she was on Young and the Restless, Sharon Farrell. I wrote her obituary this morning, and it was really sad to read.
She was the girl's stepmother in Night of the Comet.
That's right.
She's stepmother.
That's right. Yeah.
Doris.
Doris.
It's another
that's
movie I've heard the name of many times. I've never seen it. Night of the Comet.
Oh, that's a good one.
I heard the name many times, but I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like a 50s sci-fi or something? Or
It's 80s.
80s?
Yeah.
Oh, no shit. Wow.
It's like an
Like 85.
Who
Wow.
else in that? It was Mary
Mary-
Warnoff was in that.
Mary Catherine Stewart
Mary Catherine Stewart, right?
and Kelly Maroney.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actor's name who plays Hector. He's the same guy from Eating Raoul. Oh my God, that actor's name escapes me now.
It's
But,
coming up here. It's just going slow on my computer here.
Anyway, yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's a comet that ends life on Earth for everybody who is exposed to it, except for 2 Valley girls and a couple other people.
Ah,
And everyone else is either dead as a pile of dust, or they were half exposed and now they're zombies that want to attack people and suck their blood out.
Yeah.
oh my God.
Robert Beltran is.
Thank you.
Yeah. He was Chakotay on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah. And Jeffrey Lewis is in it too. Juliet
Yeah.
Lewis's father,
Yeah,
who
No
was
shit.
in Salem's Lot.
he gets to
Have
be
you guys
scary in
watched
it.
any of Yellow Jackets that's been on recently? It's
No.
a series. There's 2 seasons out already. I forget what channel it was on. It's
on, like,
really good.
Hulu or something. Yeah.
Juliet Lewis is in it, and Christina Ricci, and a bunch of other people that I don't really know, but it's surprisingly good. Like I thought it was going to be kind of generic when I started watching it, but no, it gets really good.
Oh,
Now,
cool.
I think 3rd
Yeah,
season's coming out.
I've heard it was good.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So, folks, we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about The Witch from 2015. And I'll give a super brief synopsis here. A family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. So, Michael, this was your pick. What's your first impression? When did you first see it?
I first saw it. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on video, and I watched it because I love Anya Taylor-Joy. She's yummy as far as I'm concerned. She's an attractive young lady, and yeah, and also I was just curious because the way I don't know, I'm just horror. So the first time I watched it, when it was over, I was kind of like, wait, what the hell? What was that? But then I thought about it, and it kept popping back into my mind. When did I first see it? I don't know. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I'm not sure. And thought about it for a while, and then eventually got back around to it. And the second time, I liked it a lot more. I don't know if I noticed more things, or I had already had like the foundation down. And then I watched it again, half last night and half this morning, because I knew we were going to talk about it. So I've seen it all, and I showed it to a couple of other people. So I think I've seen it all together like 5 or 6 times. And I don't know. I just really like it. It's the first time I saw it, I kind of felt like what we were saying earlier, like this has no story, like what the hell's happening? But the more I watched it, the more I was like, well, there's just enough stuff happening that seems connected. And like you said, it's kind of in the synopsis, there's families just being torn apart from all different angles by seemingly evil spirits and things, and they only give you glimpses of what the things are, like the actual witches that are in that area. They give you like a quick glimpse here and there, so there's really something happening. And I just love that movie because there's a constant feeling of dread. Like for me, there's this like it's like 2 hours of, oh shit, what's next? Like, and then there was a lot of suspicion going around, like within the family of like who's being possessed, and like I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really love it the first time I saw it, but the more I watch, and then of course the way it ends was just like, there's all kinds of, once you see how it ends and you go back and watch it again, it's kind of like, oh, at what point, anyway, I wouldn't say I love it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorite movies ever, but I've seen it multiple times and I like it a lot. Yeah.
Nice, Bill.
I saw it theatrically when it was brand new, and I was lucky because it's a beautiful film to see on a big screen. And I don't know, like it's not perfect in my opinion, but I think it's really interesting. It's one of those movies that's better in its concept than what's actually on the screen,
Yeah.
which turns out to be you wonder what kind of person would become a witch and what would it mean to become a witch. Who are witches? Like, were they people? Are they real human beings that become witches? And this ultimately, you don't really understand it at the beginning, but what you're seeing is somebody's evolution into a witch. And it was really, that took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that the first time I saw it, but I thought it was beautiful the way they depicted it. Is this character just starts being stripped of every bit of grounding that she has in the everyday world. Like, she starts to see her family disappear one by one, and then suddenly, like, she has to question, like, what is this force of evil that I've come up against?
Right.
I don't know. I thought that was really scary.
Right. Yeah, I had never heard of it, Mike. You mentioned it a couple months ago, so the wife and I sat down and watched it, and I have to say I was kind of underwhelmed by it, at least the first time. I don't mind movies that are slow burn. In fact, there's a few that I really love, but we were both like, when is this movie going to go somewhere and do something? It just didn't seem like it was going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then finally the ending was really cool. And I watched it this time around. I liked it a lot better. It's not horrible, but it's definitely something people who want to check out, modern horror movies. It's like a modern take on witches, even though it's set in the 1600s. I think it really succeeds on that level. I mean, I thought the cast was great. I really believed they were settlers.
Yeah.
Then, and you guys are right. It's totally creepy. It's just absolutely, the atmosphere in this film is great.
Yeah.
And the guy who directed it, Robert Eggers, he hasn't done a ton, but he did that one from 2022 called The Northman. The Northman, which I think was like some kind of action movie or something.
Yeah, I never saw all of it. I saw the beginning of it. It's kind of like a guy in like I don't know, like a Viking or some kind of I'm probably mischaracterizing it. People are gonna go in the carrots. It's not a Viking.
No, I think you were, because it's supposed to be like a Norseman, even though it says the Northman.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I only saw a little bit of it, but it was very much like they were like living in the mountains and he was strutting around with no shirt on, and they had all kinds of weird like stuff that they would say, like rituals and shit. But I didn't really watch the whole thing, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well, he also did The Lighthouse, which was
that was a head trip.
Yeah, it's the same director as the Lighthouse.
What's that?
I think that was the movie he made right after The Witch.
Yeah,
with The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe.
And
what's his name?
Darth Vader Christensen. What's his name?
Christensen.
Hayden Christensen, yeah, and he's phenomenal in it. No. Wait, was it him or was it the Twilight guy?
You're thinking of the Twilight guy.
It's the Twilight guy that played Batman later on.
Yes,
Pattinson. You're right. It's Pattinson. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe. Right.
That is a fucked up movie. Holy shit. And it's like a movie where almost too many things happen, so you can't keep track of what the fuck's going on. It's like the opposite of The Witch, where you're saying like The Witch is like not very eventful, but it's about this young guy who goes to stay at this lighthouse for a certain period of time. He, like, I don't know, got signed up for the job or whatever, and an older guy who's been at the lighthouse for a while is there, and at first they don't get along at all, and then they sort of get along, and then there's all this weird shit starts happening, and it gets it's a head trip. That's all I can say. And I saw it once, and I was kind of like freaked out by it because it was so weird. But kind of like The Witch, it's one of those things where you just have to have patience with it and open your mind and just kind of go with whatever happens instead of trying to like, lock on to like, okay, the plot, the diagram of a story, like, oh, there's an inciting event, and then there's a rising action, and then there's the climax, and then it comes down, and there's the denouement. It's like you can't. So a bunch of basically most of the movies we're talking about today are don't really follow that at all. But yeah, anyway, it's fucked up, but I thought it was really, really good. It's like exhausting. Like when I was done watching The Lighthouse, I was just like, I have to go to bed. Like I can't take anymore.
To me, The Witch is a lot better than The Lighthouse. I wasn't crazy about The Lighthouse, to be honest, because there's a level of pretentiousness to these films, and they're like, oh, it's almost like a Merchant Ivory production. These films, and Robert Eggers, that's his thing. He wants them to be as historically accurate as possible, which is another brilliant thing about The Witch, is there's this dialect that they're speaking, and they have to have subtitles on the screen so that you understand what the characters are saying, which
I didn't watch it with subtitles.
They were sort of, I seem to remember subtitles.
Okay, maybe
in the theater.
Yeah, I thought so, because that's the only way that I saw the movie was theatrically. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but they had a very unusual way of speaking nonetheless.
Oh yeah, they definitely did. That was another thing. I didn't really fucking get that at all the first time I saw it. I was like, what the hell are they saying? And then the next time around, I was able to pick up more. And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, that's what he's saying. Once you adapt to the weirdness of the pronunciation and stuff. Yeah,
these days I watch everything with the subtitles on. Because there's too many times where even when they're speaking English, you're like, wait a minute, what did he just say?
What did he just say? Yeah. And there's too many movies where the dialogue is whispered, and then the music is 95,000 decibels, and then they're whispering again.
Like Suspiria.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Demons was like that too. I just feel like the Italians, when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s and getting into the Italian horror films, I always felt like they didn't really know when to place the music properly. Just blast it.
It wasn't the way an American film would have done it.
Right. So Anya Taylor-Joy that you mentioned, who played Thomasin in this, I never even heard of her before this movie. And she's in a movie I do want to see. She plays Ileana Rasputin in the New Mutants, the Marvel.
Yeah, I never did see that, but she's in that. She was also in the follow-up to Unbreakable there with
Glass.
Yeah, she's in Glass. Yeah.
Oh wow. Oh,
she's the girl who gets kidnapped and
Split. I think you're thinking of.
Oh, Split. Yeah.
Split.
Yeah.
And then she's in the cage and whatnot.
Nice.
At the end.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she's good in that. And I've seen her like on just in interviews and stuff, and she's I don't know, I just love her. I don't know why. It's like, I think when I saw this movie, I wasn't necessarily like at that point of like thinking how hot she was, but it happened little by little.
That's funny.
And I think her big like dark eyes worked really well in this role. Oh, she was also in this miniseries thing on Netflix called the Queen's Gambit, about a chess player in I think it was in the 50s or 60s. She's like a teenager and she becomes like an expert chess player. That was really good.
Gosh, I've heard the title.
She's so hot. She's got like red hair and she's just yummy. Anyway, stop it, Michael. Okay. But no, The Witch, I liked The Witch a lot. It really creeped. It was just, dread and creepiness. And then the ending, when the ending came the first time, I was like, wait, what? And the second time I was like, oh, that's fantastic. Like I knew it was coming, but I was still like,
Since you brought it up, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but that whole ending where the witches are floating around. It reminded me of this famous painting from, I don't know, from that time period, where there's these witches literally floating, hovering around the fire, and then like Satan's there, and he's this big goat, like an almost humanoid goat, just sort of holding
Sure.
court.
That's exactly what that's supposed to look like.
Yeah, okay, that's what because that's exactly what it reminded me of.
Oh, I took a picture. There was a right after the movie ended. Hang on, I took a picture of the screen. That right after the movie ended, and it said the name of the director. There was this thing that said, did I not take a picture of it? No, I just read it out loud. Fuck. There was a thing on the screen. I paused it that said, this movie is based on like a combination of fairy tales, folk stories, books, and like all kinds of other stuff that from that time period that have been sort of compiled and mixed together. And so it's very possible that he saw a painting from that time and decided to model that shot after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is similar to the one I was thinking of. See if I can share this screen. Hold on.
And I think it's really interesting at the end that they don't really show, except for the final shot, they don't really show her flying at first, but the focus is on her face and how her face changes. The fear turns into excitement, which turns into this like elation of power and just total release. And I just love that at the end.
Yeah. This is
That's
this is the picture I was visualizing when I saw the end of it.
Ah,
And of course they're not hovering there. I think there's another one where they're it might be
yeah. Yeah, that looks like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So he must have put a composite together or my brain did, because there was no goat really in that end shot.
Yeah.
But
and I thought they did a really good job with the devil's voice.
yeah.
At the end, it
Black
just
Phillip.
sounded so like that's what the devil would sound like if he talked to you,
Yeah.
like it just. And the creepy, like the Black Phillip, the goat, and then also the little rabbit with the tweaked eyes, like earlier in the movie, and it was just like, holy fuck. And then the dog chases after the rabbit, and then you see the dog like all ripped apart later on, and
I
that's
found
over
out
the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hurt dogs.
I found one interesting fact about this movie that I was shocked at. The lady who plays the old version of the witch, her name's Bathsheba Garnett. She's freaking 98 years old. She was born in 1925.
Holy shit.
There's another incarnation of her in the film too, a much younger one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was played by Sarah Stevens, who I didn't.
Yeah. I think that's why she like smears the dead baby all over herself at the beginning, is to like make herself youthful.
Yeah.
She like absorbs the youth energy of the baby, and then she.
Wasn't it supposed to give them flying powers too?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about witches in general, so I'm not sure. Could be.
How would you know that?
There were so many at the end.
Research.
Are you a witch?
Yeah.
Which witch is which?
He's a witch. Burn him. There were so many at the end, though. So I'm wondering if it was in fact the same one. Like there was such a group of them at the end.
Yeah.
It does make sense that she would have gone youthful and then looked, And of course, she knew exactly how to draw in the little boy, because she could, she made her bosom nice and full and
gave him food.
Yeah. Right.
I have something called a PlayStation in my house.
Black Phillip.
Yeah.
There were definitely scenes like when the boy came back and then he was like all like lying on the ground and saying stuff and sweating, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like then he spits up an apple.
Yeah, I know.
And but then the father takes Thomason outside and he's like, okay, he was with you when you went when he disappeared. And then you went out to take care of the animals, and you're the one who happened to find him when he came back, and now he's all fucked up. And, I'm of course paraphrasing, but, and the two little twins are terrified of you and blah, 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 blah. And, she's like, yeah, but that's all made up. And then of course she said to the little girl that she was a witch because she was getting sick and tired of the bratty sister like being annoying earlier in the movie. So she's like, oh yeah, you know what? I am a witch and I'll do this to you and I'll do that to you if you don't go away. And then the girl freaks out. But she was kind of was only kidding. But as I go back and watch it again, I'm like, how much of, and she even said things like, oh, I signed his book and I meet with other witches in the wood after dark. And I was like,
Right.
where did she get that information from? Is it
Right.
just from like stories she heard or what? But then that's exactly what happens at the end. She has to sign the book and,
Yeah.
you know.
The whole thing is supposed to be she's the theme is that she's got these differing views than the Puritans that they
Yeah.
live with, and she's trying to break away and looking for, you know, sexual independence and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it's like, instead of going by what the Christian God wants, she's going to go with Satan because he's offering her something satisfying, you know.
And the parents, the whole reason they leave the village is because the father doesn't think that the village is being devout enough and
Yeah,
you know, godly enough.
religious convictions, you know, it has interesting things to say about religious convictions, because on the one hand, there's the people who are Christian and they have these differing opinions of what Christianity means and what it means to be a Christian, and then they leave this community and they're on their own, and it makes them vulnerable to
Yeah.
this other thing. And by the way, you never see any demonstration of Christian power, but you see the demonstration of Satan's power, because they're like hovering in the air and everything.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's also like a very crafty what part of the story is. She's actually seeing results
Yeah.
when she sees
Right.
all this witch stuff going on. Like, that's the only thing that's real is evil.
Yeah.
Or are there forces of good at all, or are we imagining those?
Right. Right. There's one scene in this movie, though, that really disturbed me the first time I watched, even this time around, because I'd forgotten about it. And it reminded me of a scene out of The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, where in that movie, the zombie literally goes to this woman who's sitting there and he rips her shirt off and tears her boob right off
Yeah.
her body. And in this, you've got the raven that's just like pecking away.
Oh
at the baby
yes.
poop. I was like, oh man, I can't unsee that now.
Like
Yeah.
the devil is just fucking with that whole family.
Yeah.
Like just messing with their heads. And I this time around, I was like, I wonder if he's trying to find out which of them is the most vulnerable. Like, you know, like which one is the most broken that he can like recruit. I don't know. I guess maybe because you would think if he had already chosen Thomason, he wouldn't be messing with the rest of the family so badly. But maybe he was doing it to separate her from them even more.
It seemed to me that she was the target the whole time, because
Yeah.
he just kept taking the family members away one by one until
And the
only
ones
she
that
was left.
remained were like suspicious of her and accusing her. And yeah.
Right.
They were all, and she was already saying herself, even if it was jokingly, that she was a witch.
Yeah.
So this was going to be, you know, it was going to come true for her.
Right. And the whole thing of her taking her clothes off at the end was it was metaphorically, she was shedding her old life.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the values of the Puritans and all that.
Right.
All right.
And she was rebellious enough to like insult her father and call him a coward and all that other stuff like that. You just did not fucking do that at that time. That was not but she had enough, and she just started screaming at him and calling him names and pointing out his mistakes. And I was like, oh shit, for that time, that was fucking rebellion right there. She was being devilish by doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just did not do that with your parents at that time. It was not a
No.
thing.
Pretty much up until the 1970s, he didn't do that.
Right. No, right.
Excuse me. So, Michael, this was your pick. What is your final thought on The Witch from 2015?
I think I like it a little more every time I watch it. I think it's one of those movies that I will come back to every couple of years. It's not my normal type of movie. I normally like things that are, you know, like really obvious monster right from the beginning, ripping people in half, and they got to figure out how to kill it, you know. But this is like you said, it was like a slow burn, but like, I don't know. I really like it. I wouldn't, would I say it's one of my top horror movies? I don't know. I've always had such a hard time putting like numbers on things. But I guess the fact that I've come back to it so many times means that it might very well be up in my top 10 somewhere. But yeah, I really like it. I love it. I really like it.
Bill?
It's definitely my favorite of Robert Eggers' films that I've seen anyway. And the thing that struck me the most when I saw it was the atmosphere and the visuals, which it has a very drained color palette. It's very like sort of muted, all the colors. And then there are these, of course, whenever there's blood, it's bright red, and you're like, oh my God. But it reminded me a lot of Werner Herzog's Nosferatu,
Oh yeah.
which is kind of ironic because Robert Eggers directed a remake of Nosferatu, and it's in post-production right now. I think it's finished. I'm not sure, but I'd be really interested to see that when it comes out. I'm kind of looking forward to that because I don't know. I think he could do something interesting with that concept. You know, it's going to be the same old shit no matter who does it.
Right.
So on the one hand, it's doomed from that end. But if you can make some, I mean, Werner Herzog made something amazing out of it, and it was.
We also had Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, the original vampire.
The ace in the hole. Yeah,
real life vampire.
Which reminds me, on a different note, I want to see that movie, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. That looks really.
Me too.
That's like, as soon as I heard the name, I was like, oh shit, that's Dracula's boat.
And at some point, I know I've said this a few times. At some point, I really want us to do the mini series called Midnight Mass. It was on, I don't know if it was Netflix or what. It was like, I don't know how many episodes, maybe 6 or 9. I don't know. My roommate and I watched it last year, and it's fucked up, but it's really good. It's like a small town, and it has a lot of similar themes about like religion and stuff. And there's like vampires and demons sort of mixed in, and it's really good. It's really definitely worth, I think, watching and talking about on the Fright Lounge or whatever format we choose.
Cool. Have you heard of that, Bill? I haven't heard of that.
Midnight Mass.
New to me, but if it's a TV series, that's why I don't know what it is, because I try to avoid TV because I don't have that much time to devote to it.
Yeah.
I
don't remember how many episodes. I want to say maybe 9.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure for sure, but good. There's definitely a lot of things to discuss, like different interpretations of what does that actually mean. And yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, my final thought on The Witch is, like I said, it didn't really blow my skirt up the first time I saw it, but it's definitely a good Saturday night popcorn scary flick.
Yeah.
That's probably not the right term for a popcorn flick, but it's definitely a great one to throw on a Saturday night. Because it's really got the mood and the atmosphere, and the more you watch it, I think the more it's one of those films, the more you get out of it. Some people might have to walk into it knowing that they're going to need a little bit of patience to get where it's going, but in the end, the payoff is really good. So I recommend it.
Especially if you don't understand the dialogue, that can be really frustrating.
Yeah. Give the devil in you, Connor. All right. So, okay. Our final film is The Blair Witch Project from 1999. And the synopsis is as follows. 3 student filmmakers, Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard, hike into the Black Hills near Burkittsville, Maryland in 1994 to film a documentary about a local myth known as the Blair Witch. All 3 disappear, but their equipment and footage are discovered a year later. The purportedly found footage is the movie the viewer sees. First impressions, Mike. Once again, this was kind of one of your picks.
When I saw this in the theater, like the first week it came out, not the weekend it came out, but like the middle of the following week it had come out. And it was, I don't remember what time of year, but it was part of the time of year when the sun went down early. So like when I went into the movie, I went by myself. I went into the movie when it was still relatively light. And when I came out, it was dark. And there was that movie, the first time I saw it, I don't know what the planets aligned or something, scared the fucking hell out of me. It was just the idea that there were different interpretations of what this thing was, and there was plenty of evidence that something really was out there doing stuff, but we never got to see what it was. And that not knowing by itself just scared me to fucking death. And I'm gonna go even further and make myself sound like the biggest wimp in the world, but that movie revived my fear of the dark. Like for like a month after that, when I was in my house, if it was dark, I had to have like lights on just to have them on. And I hated going to bed and being in my room with no lights on, because I would just lie there and like play the movie over in my head. And we lived in a building where the washer and dryer were down in the basement, and it was a very rocky, unfinished basement. And I would not go down and do laundry unless it was daylight for like a month after I saw that movie. In fact, I got home. I know it's so stupid, right? I got home the night after the first night I had seen it. I got home. My roommate wasn't home, and I was so freaked out. I was like, I have to talk to somebody. So I called my friend Tim in Chicago, and I was like, "Hey, is Tim there?" His wife answered, who I also know. And she's like, "Oh, he's not here." And I'm like, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but I just saw a movie scared the shit out of me. Are you free to talk for a few minutes? Because I was so, I don't know why it scared me so much, but it just did. And I knew that it wasn't really found footage. Like, I knew that had been a marketing scheme, but still, for some reason, it just scared the shit out of me. And then
I seem to remember, I'm going to interrupt you right there. I seem to remember you calling me, asking me if it was real, because you thought it was real.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I did.
You're like, or maybe you had found out and then you told me and you were like, I thought that was fucking real. I can't believe it.
Maybe I did. Okay, maybe I'm mixing it up. I might not have found out until afterward. Maybe, okay, it's possible I thought it was real, which would have been even worse, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember, I specifically remember lying in bed, it was like 10 days after I had seen it, and it was dark, and I was like in my bed, terrified like a little fucking 7-year-old. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, Michael, let's be logical. First of all, it was a movie. Second of all, it was supposedly took place like years ago. And third of all, you're not in Maryland. You're not in it happened in a specific location, and that's not where you are. So even if this thing was real, it can't come get you. Like, that's the kind of like thoughts that were going through my head. It was so, I haven't had a movie affect me like that, I don't think, in my whole life. Wow. Except for possibly the original Texas Chainsaw, that stayed with me. But the problem is that I had this weird experience with it, and then every time I told other people how much it scared me, they ended up seeing it like on video or after the fact, or after there had been all kinds of talk and spoilers about it, and they would watch it and just go, I don't know what your problem is, man. That movie wasn't even fucking scary at all. It was just annoying. And I was like, I totally get that. But, and now when I watch it, it hardly affects me at all. I'm just like, yeah, because, you know, I've seen it probably, I've only watched it like maybe 4 times, but I can totally see how if you weren't coming at it from the weird place that I was, you wouldn't find it scary. But I, for some reason, and the audience that I saw it with was like all people who had never seen it as well. So we were all kind of holding our breath at the same time and going, you know, at the same time. And it just, I don't know. I've never had a movie affect me that much, but then in subsequent viewings, it just doesn't hold up in that way. But I had this weird first experience with it.
You can never get that back after that happens to you. Yeah. Like, I think as film fans, and especially horror fans, we spend our lives trying to recapture that feeling that we had when we saw these movies for the first time and they scared the hell out of us.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when we covered The Shining on my Then Is Now podcast, and my son Spencer and his girlfriend, we watched it. They fucking hated it. They were like, it's not scary at all. What's the big deal about this movie? And I had to kind of explain to them my experience watching it the first time in the theater. And
yeah, you can't communicate that to other people.
Right.
It's uniquely your own.
Yeah,
I learned that the hard way. Just like Mike, everything Michael said, I could mirror that, because I saw this movie when it was newish, not opening night, but, you know, probably opening week, or the following weekend. The theater was packed, and I didn't really know that much about going into it. I watched that program, I think it was on MTV at the time, called Curse of the Blair Witch, and it was that sort of faux news or TV program about the Blair Witch. And I knew that it was just a marketing scheme, but I thought it was kind of cool anyway. I was like, wow, they're really going all out. They made a TV program that's almost as long as the actual movie. I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting that there were multiple levels of this really low budget movie, because I think they only spent like 30 grand on it,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. It might have even been 10, I'm not sure. But I was completely disturbed by this movie. I got the same feeling when I saw this as I did when I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time. And it's not because anything really all that shocking happens on camera, and that's why I loved it even more. There was just this really, it really comes into play whether or not you've been outside in a desolate place in the dark, like where you are so far, you're not getting the glow of a city nearby. You're not getting street lamps anywhere near. You have to, like, you travel like, probably 20 minutes to the nearest street lamp, and it's nighttime, and you hear all the sounds of the forest around you at night, and you're like, what's out there? You can't see anything, and you have no
Right.
concept of what could be out there watching you as
Mhm.
while you're in the woods. And this movie just puts these characters at the mercy of that situation, and that was really scary to me. I thought that above any of the witch stuff, just the idea of being lost in the woods like that is terrifying, because how long can you make it? Are you ever going to get out of there? Why are you walking in circles?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I saw this. It was same with you guys. It was either opening weekend or the weekend after. I fucking hated this movie. I'm
I
sorry. I'm
know.
gonna be the odd man
I
out.
remember you saying it. Yeah, I hate this movie.
And you know what? Watching it again this time, I fucking hated it again. In
Did
the
you at least
theater.
watch it on a smaller screen so you wouldn't get motion sickness?
Well, yes and no. I sometimes watch it on my big screen. I had to watch it in increments, in like 10-minute shots, and then go
Oh.
away and come back again the next day, because when watching it in the theater, I was starting to get sweaty, and I was starting to feel like I used to feel when I was a little kid, getting car sick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I was dating my ex-wife at the time, and I'm like, I'll be right back. I got to go put cold water on my face. And I ended up having to do that twice throughout the movie, and I couldn't quite figure out until towards the end, like, what was causing this. And it was the motion, the friggin' shaky cam. It was just like
Yeah.
ground, trees, ground, trees, ground, trees, and then the movie ends. And I'm like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah.
Oh man, I hated it. I really tried. I gave it the college try because you guys both said you liked it. So I had said I would never ever watch this movie again, but
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I watched it, and man, it was hard for me to get
I said
through
we
it.
could talk about it without you watching it again. Don't torture yourself.
Well, I wanted to see if my opinion changed. But there were so many times, even on the small screen, where I had to look away. I'm like watching the movie like this. The TV's over there, and I'm like,
yeah.
So like upstairs, we have the really large, the 80-inch.
Yeah.
And then here I've got like a I don't know, 50, 60-inch. And man, that was just like it was hard to get through.
Yeah.
I did, we grew up north of Boston, so I didn't really have that fear of the woods. Although now I could say if I step out of my backyard now, there's like nothing. It's wilderness, and that's kind of scary. But I thought that Amanda, I keep wanting to call her Amanda Donahoe. Isn't that the chick from Lair of the White Worm?
Yeah.
It's Donahue.
White Worm. Donahue, Blair Witch.
Yeah. I thought she was less obnoxious this time around. The first time I watched it, I couldn't stand her. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God. I just wanted to reach into the movie theater screen and punch her in the head.
I felt that way too this time around. I thought she was slightly less annoying.
Yeah.
But she was such a control freak in the beginning,
Yeah. And the only thing that irritated me beyond the film was when people would talk about it around the time it came out, and they're like, yeah, and it's this thing they made up. It's called found footage. And I remember going, no, Cannibal Holocaust was found footage.
Yeah. And then there were so many imitators afterward.
Now, I will tell you guys, and I think I've said this before in the show, we even talked about it maybe it was on one of my other shows, but George Romero's Diary of the Dead is also a found footage movie. However, I love that movie. And if you watch it, he knows when to put the camera down. He knows when to switch to a static security camera, or the person holding the camera puts it on the counter.
Yeah.
It's like you get moments where you're like, okay, it's not quite like that. Like Cloverfield. I freaking love the premise of Cloverfield. I will never, ever watch that movie again because I got sick in that one too.
I was going to ask you if that one bothered you just as much, because I think that's worse.
Yeah. That and there's another one. Mike, you might know this one. I don't know if you've heard of it, Bill. It's called Next Stop Wonderland, and it was a film that was shot in Boston. It's with who is the dude that beat Tom,
Heard of
your
it.
friend Tom out um for Twister? He
I'm
just
sorry,
died.
what was your question? Bill Paxton?
Bill Paxton.
No, not Bill Paxton.
Oh,
The he played what's his name? The guy that wrote In Cold Blood, Truman Capote.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in that. He was like the main character because he was from the Boston area.
That's right.
But
That's
that
right.
was
yeah.
all handheld, and it wasn't even as shaky as Cloverfield or Blair Witch. But I got sick in that movie too.
Yeah, I do think. Yeah, it was a little bit too much disorientation in the Blair Witch. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get sick from it, but there were definitely moments where I was getting annoyed. Like, for fuck's sake, just hold the goddamn camera still and show me something, you know. But I did like, there were certain points in the movie where I was like, I understood the disorientation. Like, okay, what the fuck? Like, you're supposed to be like, what the fuck is going
Right.
on at that point, you know, because they don't know either. But I was going to say one more thing. What was it? Oh, somebody told me after I had seen the movie, and it is like months and months later or whatever. And somebody said, why didn't they just follow the flow of the water to get out? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have a map, just follow the fucking river that will, or the stream or whatever. You can't go in a circle if you're following the water. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like, what? Nope, none of them thought of that.
They
the
were
sun.
newbies. They
Don't know how to like
greenhorns.
navigate with the sun, you know, like,
Stupid kids.
yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So this was mostly improv.
Yeah.
And the director did something else. I wanted to mention it. He did the sequel, which is Book of Shadows,
Awful.
which 2. Oh, I didn't even bother.
So awful.
What is it even about? Do I want to know? Do I want to even care?
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
I
Fucking
liked it.
terrible.
I had
I
a
thought it
reaction
was
to the
good.
first one. I
Well-
was never going to see the second one.
I saw it in the theater and I remember hating it, but I've never gone back to it, so I don't know.
They don't ever give you what you want. It's one of those secrets. It's kind of like The Exorcist 2 to the Blair Witch Project. It's like the same concept, but presented in a totally different way. It's not
Yeah.
a found footage film, sort of. There is found footage stuff in it, or like security cam footage, and but I don't know. I thought it was, at least they tried to do something different with it. It wasn't great
Yeah.
by any means, but it was unusual. I'll give it that.
I might watch it again just out of curiosity, but I remember at the time just thinking, well, that was fucking stupid.
I think it was co-directed because Eduardo Sanchez also is listed as a director on here, and he did a
Yeah.
bunch of episodes of Supernatural and the film VHS 2, which I've never even seen the first one. I've heard those are good. Bill, you must have seen those, right?
Yeah, I love the VHS series.
Have you
It's
seen
all
those,
good
Michael?
stuff.
No.
No.
Have any of you guys ever seen any of these movies, The Terrifier, about the weird clown?
I watched the first half of the first one because I heard the second one was incredibly amazing, and it was really good. I was late or something. I had to go
I'm
to
kind
bed.
of curious about it, but I'm not sure if it's any good. Or Bill, have you seen any of those?
I haven't seen any of the Terrifier films. It didn't, I don't watch any movie that was made later than 1985.
You watched The Witch.
No, The Witch was yeah.
That was made in 1978, I think.
Oh,
The
okay.
Witch. They just discovered it buried
Oh.
somewhere, unearthed it, and released it to theaters.
I see. Yeah, that's fair.
That's funny.
uh,
Let's see. There was something you asked about the budget. I had something in my notes here.
I read your notes after I said that. It was actually 60 grand ultimately that it cost.
Right.
and it made a shit ton of money
Oh yeah. What's 60 grand too?
because of the buzz, you know.
250 million.
Wow.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And then the
Well-
second movie probably made a little bit of money based on the title, you know. It was
The
like,
same
oh,
way the same way Exorcist 2 made a little bit of money when it came out, even though nobody liked it.
Yeah.
That's another one that no one likes it, but I love Exorcist 2. I like it better than Exorcist 3, even though
Really?
Exorcist 3 is a great movie, but I
Yeah.
really love Exorcist 2. I think it's just one of the most brave sequels that anybody ever followed up a movie like The Exorcist with. Something that was just the sequel was never going to make everybody happy. That was just sort of like a given. You could never get back that magic that was The
Right.
Exorcist.
Right.
Right.
So, you know,
So why try?
Borman took it in a completely different direction, and I thought he told a really interesting story about evil and the transference of evil, which was a theme of the original Exorcist.
Right.
It was thematically linked, and you know, The Exorcist is all about the transference of evil, and so was Cruising, one of the movies that Friedkin made later after The Exorcist. But Exorcist 2, I will defend that movie to my dying day, because you know, after you get over the shock of seeing it the first time, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, go back and watch it again, like with a little bit more open mind. And it's, you know, it was a troubled production. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense at the first time you see it, maybe even the second time. I promise you, let it into your life. Make Exorcist 2 part of your heart.
I have seen it. I saw it when it first came out on video, but for the life of me, I don't remember any of it.
Wow.
I think Linda Blair's in it again, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in it. She was like about 15, I think, when they made it, or 14.
Okay.
Maybe older, I'm not sure. Her character is only supposed to be 14 years old, Reagan. And Kitty Wynn came back. Of course, Ellen Burstyn said absolutely not. Probably with good reason, I have to say. But Kitty Wynn came back, and Louise Fletcher is in it, playing a role that was originally written for a man. She has a man's name in it, Gene, Gene, but she's a woman. And Richard Burton, a very drunk Richard Burton, is in it playing.
That's awesome. That's worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Burton is just genius.
Was it Louise Fletcher, Nurse Ratched, and the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah. Oh, and oh my God, James Earl Jones is in it too.
Oh wow.
Wow.
All right, I'm gonna have to add that to the list.
I was just thinking, not necessarily on Fright Lounge, but I don't know, on any thing about movies that we do. It would be interesting for if we each did like lists of like our movies that we like that are like unpopular in general, or like guilty pleasures that we have, you know, like, or you know, opinions that we have that we know go against the grain of what everybody else would say. Yeah, because like while Bill was saying that, I thought of 2 or 3 of my own, but I was like, well, I don't want to take the conversation like in a completely other direction right now. But that's kind of like
the one right off the top of my head that I love, and I think I'm the only person in the no, actually, I did meet someone recently who is the other person in the country that likes it.
Yeah, it's like either a movie that we know is terrible, but we love it anyway, or it's good, but everybody says it's bad compared to, you know, another one. And yeah, I think that would be just I don't know, it's just a random idea I had about a theme we could do. And we wouldn't need to talk about all of them for like 45 minutes, but just like, you know.
Oh, but I could. If you get me talking about
I have no doubt
feel that way about, I am going to talk for 45 minutes. I'm warning you.
Well, okay.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, we could, but if we had enough of them, we would probably like chop them down to like 10 or 15 minutes per. And then we could react to each other's things and whatnot. Although we might not be able to see them all, but anyway.
So is there anything else you guys want to say about the Blair Witch Project? Because I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say.
I don't know well, except for what Bill just told me. I personally don't know anybody else who had it affect them the way it affected me. And I'm actually a little bit shocked. Oh, I do have one more thing I want to say. Before the movie came out, before I saw it, I read, see, this is where it gets confusing of whether I knew it was real or not. But I read like a little article in some local paper or something in Boston where it was like the writers, directors talking about how they came up with the idea. And they said they used to watch, when they were kids, they used to watch like In Search Of, or like these weird, you know, supernatural type shows. And then they said like there would be one about Bigfoot, and the episode would end with like, nobody ever got a good look at it. We don't know for sure what it is. And nobody knows where it is. We haven't found it. And like for them, just that idea, not knowing, scared the shit out of them. And I think they even said in the article that like Freddy Krueger after a while wasn't scary anymore because we knew what he looked like and we knew how he talked and we knew what he was going to do, and he just wasn't, he wasn't really that scary anymore because he became like a character. But one of the guys said that when he was a kid, after he would watch one of these shows about Bigfoot or something, he would go take a shower, and while he was washing his hair and his eyes were closed, he would imagine that like Bigfoot was going to come in through his window and like pull him out and kill him. Just because they left the show open-ended, and like and that's what they said. They said not knowing is scarier than knowing sometimes, like it's, not knowing exactly what it looks like or where it is or what it can do, what it can't do, what it knows, what it doesn't know, when or if it's going to come get you, like that idea. And then for me, that was definitely what the thing that scared the shit out of me about it the first time, was that there were different versions of the story, and their experiences were so random but scary, and at the end you had no real idea what had happened, what the so that
It really could have been
scared the
anything.
piss out of me. Yeah,
It could have been anything. It didn't even really have to have a supernatural explanation. Like there could have been people out there messing with them that they didn't see,
yeah,
that were following them, but
right.
that's, to me, that's a successful horror film. Is any film that takes place in the imagination of the viewer is going to be better than anything you can show them on the screen.
Yeah.
And that's what the Blair Witch Project is to me. It exists almost entirely in the viewer's imagination, because what they give you actually on screen is so little.
Yeah.
And it's presented so simply, like a direct first person camera narrative, and I'll always be a big fan of low budget movies as opposed to movies that they spend millions of dollars to make, because almost to the letter, with exceptions like The Exorcist, big budget movies that actually did end up scary. The bigger the movie's budget is, less of a chance it's going to be scary. And the really scary shit comes at you from places you don't even know it's coming from until it's too late.
Right.
To me, that's a low budget movie. And the scariest ideas can get through that way, because there's nothing but pure inspiration when you only have a limited amount of money to work with. So I think that was Blair Witch Project's greatest strength, is it didn't have any budget on screen, and that totally worked it was just this fear of the unknown, that something was happening, but you never really got a grasp of what it was. And these characters were in danger. It never let go of that feeling.
And there's the whole thing about, the people in the town, or the people that they met along the way that told them about the story. And, this guy killed 40 kids and he would make them stand in the corner and all that stuff. And you could see how that gets into their heads. So then when they're really lost in the woods, like you said, it may not necessarily be supernatural. It could just be that they snap because they're so terrified from what they heard, compounded by the fact that they're out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
In the blackest of night.
And I love the way they handled those interviews on the street with those people at the beginning. They were so believable. Like it really just seemed like they were talking to some random fuckhead that they stumbled across on the sidewalk. But they obviously must have told them, like, here's the general idea. You're going to tell us about this, blah, 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 this weird shit that happened. And then one guy was talking about a killer who was a man who had killed a bunch of kids. And then when they talked to this other woman, she was saying that it was a female, but then she had like this weird hair on her body. And it was so, even that, the descriptions were conflicting. So yeah, I had no idea what the hell I was dealing with,
It was pure legend.
It reminded me of a shaky version of The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Yeah.
Similar documentary kind of style.
Especially the documentary stuff at the beginning, that is one Boggy Creek 100%.
Yeah.
But the Blair Witch Project actually takes you into a story where horror is happening to the main characters.
Right.
And this is, I said earlier, or somebody said earlier about I lost my train of thought.
Documentary style.
It was about the budget of the film and how the budget was really low. And oh, I know what it was, because they were out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, and they were they were tired. They also didn't have any food. They'd been out there for days and they hadn't been eating anything. And they were starting to, it's easy to, when you watch it from a perspective of you're living in a civilized society where if you get hungry, you're probably going to be able to go get something to eat. And these characters were like cut off from that. Once you take that away from people, that changes their makeup entirely when they're hungry and they're afraid.
Right.
And that's what happened. And there were smokers in this group and they hadn't had any cigarettes.
Oh my God.
Like cut people off from that stuff and they start to become very different.
Yeah.
So you see that happen to these characters in it. And I think that's also part of what makes it scary.
And weren't the actors really scared themselves? Like they were kind of psyching themselves into being scared?
I think in some cases the director didn't tell them what was going to happen. Like, I think there was some scene where I think the noises in the woods they didn't know was going to happen exactly the way it did. And the punching of the tent, like the impact of the tent on the outside, I think they said, okay, like wake up inside the tent and then you're going to hear something or whatever. But then instead of just sounds, they had people like pushing the sides of the tent in. And so I think that scared them because they weren't expecting it. Yeah.
I think their direction they got in the form of messages that were left at different GPS points. And they would go and there'd be a message there telling them what to do. So they were really living this sort of. I'm sure they had an idea of what had to happen as far as the story beats, but there was really no script.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bill, tell us about this newspaper ad.
Oh, I don't know. This is from its original run in the Pittsburgh area. The Cheswick Theater was one of my childhood theaters when I was growing up.
Nice.
The Cheswick Quads, now sadly demolished, as are all of my childhood movie places. They're all gone.
I know. Same here.
I didn't see this. I had left the Cheswick Springdale area at this point. This was the late 90s. I think I saw this at one of those big multiplex type theaters that they have no character or soul.
Oh man, that's funny.
Can you imagine being a filmmaker and making this cheap little movie and having some critic put on the poster, this scariest movie since The Exorcist? Like, Can you just imagine if your movie got that put on the poster? Like, I mean, you'd be on cloud 9,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But maybe not. Like I'd be a little worried about that because that was definitely the career peak for these filmmakers. And once someone says that about your movie, you might as well just stop because you're never going to make a movie that good again.
Right. That's true.
It might even be in the notes. I read that Amanda Donoghue was regretting the fact that she used her real name because she hasn't been able to really get work since then.
Yeah.
But I get a funny story in this, kind of an amusing story. But so the wife and I sit down and watch this, right? And I look it up on my Just Watch app and I'm like, okay, it's on blah, blah, blah streaming service. I forget which one it was. And we're watching it and it starts off and it's not quite so shaky and it's kind of interesting. And then they bring out these drones and I'm like, wait a minute. This movie is 1999. We didn't have drones in 1999. And then I paused it and then I looked it up and I realized I was watching the remake from 2018, or it's kind of a remake quasi reboot. And I was
really?
Like, oh, shit, we're watching the wrong movie.
Oh, I didn't know that they made one.
Yeah.
It's just called Blair Witch.
Yeah. So
I gotta check that out.
Yeah. So I found the real version on Freevee through Amazon.
Yeah. I watched everything on Tubi, and then I watched The Witch on HBO.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
with Blair Witch wasn't on Tubi. I couldn't find it. Was it
Freevee or Tubi or one of those? Yeah,
I know they're all.
Maybe it was. Yeah,
Tubi's awesome, and now like Vinegar Syndrome is it or Arrow has an app that you can watch their movies on. It's pretty cool.
What the hell is Vinegar Syndrome? Is that a channel?
No,
Vinegar Syndrome. Oh,
Vinegar.
they're a film company that releases stuff on home media, and they
Oh,
rescue just like the forgotten films of the 70s. The term Vinegar
okay.
Syndrome is when a film turns pink over time. That's what that's called.
Oh,
Like a
because of
30.
the chemicals in the developing fluid
the
and stuff.
celluloid breaks down. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
that's they rescue films like they do, but they do the really really offbeat stuff. Like they do a lot of 70s porn, a lot of porn they put out, but a lot of it is like the ultra offbeat low budget horror too, or any kind of genre. I mean, they're not really limited to any one genre, but
hmm.
they're they touch the stuff that other people say no to. Vinegar Syndrome.
And then they put it on like channels like Freevee and stuff.
Well, they release it on Blu-ray. They do a
Oh,
digital scan, and sometimes 2K, 4K. They
hmm.
do amazing work. They just put out so many of my favorite films recently. The Children,
Oh yeah.
Mausoleum. Um, oh God, Night of the Demon. Or wait, that was Severin. Sorry,
Yeah.
Severin.
Hey, I
um,
just got the Blu-ray of Impulse in the mail today from Grindhouse Releasing.
did you?
Yeah.
Did you look at my ad gallery on
I literally took it out of the mailbox, put it on the counter, and then I came down here to do the show.
it? Okay, well, that has to be the first thing you watch on the Impulse
Absolutely.
Blu-ray.
Absolutely. Oh my God.
Did the Blair Witch remake do well, or did it tank? The 2018 one.
You didn't even know there was one, so you tell me.
Good point. Good point. Good point.
Oh man, there's so many movies that have been remade, and it's like and the worst thing is that some
What do you?
stupid people will go see these movies and not know that it's a remake.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. And then you try to convince them that the original had some. Yeah, there. It's kind of like what Bill was saying, and I think we say it all the time on these kinds of on this podcast. It's just like you can't recapture the original, the context in which the movie was originally released, and the way people saw it, and how, like now that there's social media and people, and there's CGI, and people have all these expectations of things, and their attention spans are short and all this other crap. Like you can't, not crap but stuff, you can't like convince people that in a movie was better when it first came out than it seems to be now.
yeah. I mean,
It's
I will never
just,
forget my Jaws experience. 5 years old, 1975. That movie scared the living shit out of me. I could barely take a bath for 2 years after that.
Mhm.
I didn't see it until I was 15, and we rented our first VCR, or my dad bought a VCR, and that was the first movie we rented. And I think we watched Jaws like 6 times in one weekend because we could watch it at home.
Frank
And I had never
Palvino's in the
seen it
chat
until
on
that time.
Facebook. On
What?
Oh,
Facebook, Frank Palvino is watching us, and he mentioned in the chat that Jaws is scary until you see the shark. So he brought up
Right.
Jaws a little bit ago too.
It's the same idea as yeah, well, partly the same idea as Blair Witch, where like, yeah, you see the barrels and the shark is there, but yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't see him, I really think they should have. I mean, I know it's budget and blah blah blah, but there's even that bit where the cage, where they made a little small cage and they filmed it with like a real shark. The real shark in that scene has a much longer, pointier face than the mechanical one they were using. And
Bruce.
like, didn't
yeah.
it occur to them to like make that more similar? Like, what the hell?
Right.
I never paid
Uh,
attention to it. I didn't really think about it until you just said that.
Well,
no, I
and
mean, this is after like the 20th time I saw the movie. That's the only
right.
time I.
Back then, they didn't expect us to be talking about it however many decades later and
Right.
No.
every scene,
And watching it 100 times and
Yeah.
pausing it, and
Steven
it's true.
Spielberg's very glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Yeah.
I apologize, Frank, for I didn't I looked over the comments and my thing had stopped. My Facebook had frozen, so I didn't see that there were new ones. But yeah, he said Paranormal Activity is like Blair Witch with a tripod.
True.
But
Well,
I oh, go ahead.
you guys said earlier that there was some people think that Blair Witch invented the found footage genre. It didn't invent it, but it certainly did kickstart it, the way that Halloween kickstarted the slasher genre. Like, even
Right.
though it wasn't really a slasher itself, maybe, but
Yeah.
there were movies like Halloween before Halloween. They just didn't catch on the way Halloween did. So all of a sudden there was this money that could be made by making movies like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, guys. Well, that was a fun discussion. Did we do final thoughts on this movie? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
Did
we
we?
finalized
Right.
the hell out
I think
of
we
it.
did.
So you two recommend it. If you're curious, I recommend it. If not, I will never watch this movie again.
Blair Witch. I don't even know if I would recommend it to people because I don't think anybody's gonna. I think the chances that people are gonna get. Well, I guess I would recommend people see it to get their own opinion, but
Yeah.
they could never. Yeah, I shouldn't say never, but I think the odds of them being as scared. I would have to recommend it without telling them how scared I was when I saw it because that would mess up their expectations. But
Right.
yeah, I
Films
would.
are
I guess I
always
would.
films are always finding new audiences, like old movies. They're constantly finding a new audience. And there's
That's
this
true.
phenomenon now online of reaction videos. And
Yeah,
it's for people like us. We want to watch a video of somebody younger than us or different than us watching something that we like and reacting to it.
they've never seen. Yeah,
So I think there's a lot of that. Like when we show these movies, we can't feel the way we did when we saw them for the first time. But what we really want is to see somebody react the way we did when we watched
Yeah.
the movie. And when they don't, we're a little disappointed.
yeah,
But that said, I'll never stop telling people to watch these movies because I want people, there has to be people out there that will see it
Yeah.
and react the same way that I did.
yeah. True. I suppose that's true. Yeah.
Speaking of reactions, my
Right.
wife and I went and saw the new Mission Impossible movie the other day, and there were 3 moments in the film where we jumped out of our seats and screamed.
I'm so depressed. I didn't get to see that on the big screen. I
Still out, I think.
was essentially broke
Oh.
with I had no expendable money for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And I was like, fuck. And then I went to look for it last week and it wasn't playing at my theater that I always go to. And the only ones that was was like a midday showing at this random distant theater. And I think it's on its way out, like way
that's
too
too bad.
fast. It'll be the first Mission Impossible movie that I didn't see in the theater.
Wow. Do you remember when we saw the first one?
Depressing.
And the first Mission Impossible, Bill, this is a funny story, and then we'll wrap things up here. So in the first, have you seen any of the Mission Impossibles, Bill?
Me? Yeah, I saw the first 2.
Okay. So in the first one, they set up the whole premise in the first 10 minutes, and they don't ever actually say what the premise is. It's the whole thing about the knock list. And they don't ever say what it is again. They reference it, but they don't say what it is. And Mike and I are watching the movie, and like 10 minutes into the movie, this couple walks in and sits down in front of us, and you can see their heads like, together going, what's going on? What's going on? They had absolutely no idea what was going on because they totally missed the first 10 minutes.
Missed the first 10 minutes. That's it. You're
It
done.
should have been like Hitchcock would have said, no one's going to be admitted after the first, after the start of Mission Impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
And it wasn't until like an hour and 10 minutes later where 2 characters actually talked about it again, like what it was and what it meant. It was like, okay, well, yeah.
at that point. But all right, folks. Well, that's all the time we have for this month's Fright Lounge. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you check out some of these films if you haven't seen them. Definitely, like the guy said, you gotta at least see it once, formulate your own opinion. Don't go by my opinion.
Right.
Can be
Or mine either.
Or mine.
Yeah.
Who cares? It's all about how you feel about
It's
it.
all subjective. It's what you bring to it as well as part of how you interpret it. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Bill, where can the folks find you online?
Driveanasylum.com collects all of my online activities. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. on the Groovy Doom Facebook page and YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to Groovy Doom on YouTube. I have a program I do every week with my show partner, Sam Panico, and it's called the Drive-In Asylum Double Feature. I also publish a print fanzine called Drive-In Asylum. Issue number 25 is going to be out soon, featuring Rigor with a great piece on soap opera horror connections. And I liked this one. I can't wait for part 2 because one of my favorite movies of all time that he's going to talk about. So
Nice.
We'll see.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Bill. And yes, folks, if you want to check out me and my other podcasts and my 4 blogs, you can go to my website at Haven Podcasts. That's plural, havenpodcasts.com. Thank you, folks. And we will see you again next month. Date yet to be determined.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oops.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. Bye, 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 bye.
And then we're gonna have to pay copyright rights.
Ah, damn it. Oh, well, shit. But I only sang like 5 seconds of it and I don't know the words really. So
Okay,
does that count?
I think we're
Isn't
all
there
right.
like a grace period if it's less than 10 seconds or something?
I think so. I don't think anyone will be concerned.